This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk for a big Monday edition coming out of a couple of the games from the Young Stars tournament in Penticton, including another one happening right now, which we'll be following in the afternoon for those of you with us live on YouTube. Huge week in the National Football League. Connor Hrabchak was at the Vikings-Niner game. He probably isn't in a great mood because of that, but it is his birthday, so we'll look forward to having Connor jump on. We'll talk a little NFL and a full recap of the weekend coming out of Sunday a little later on today. And Jeff Hamilton will pop on. Man, did the Toronto Argonauts do the Winnipeg Blue Bombers a big favor on Friday night, beating the BC Lions in BC. So the Bombers wake up in first place, getting ready for their huge matchup this week against the Edmonton Elks in the first of a home-and-home series. We're going to touch on the Goldeyes, a crazy ending, and a huge win for the Manitoba Bisons in their home opener as well, and much more on today's program. Great to have you all with us. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, a big thank you to the sponsors that make this program happen each and every day. Of course, we'll have a new CFL 110 brought to you by Garage Living on Wednesday. And, of course, our great sponsors, Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Consolidated Supply, Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, Canadian Club, F Apparel, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Little Brown Jug, and, of course, the Winnipeg Goldeyes, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Breezy Bend, and we will get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get this show going. Welcome to everybody hanging out with us in chat. And welcome to Michael Remis. What's up, buddy?
The countdown is on. Training camp this week. Really exciting stuff. Here, Huss, it's still hot out. You can still wear shorts outside. Feeling great here.
Yeah, listen, I am wearing a collared shirt today. I got a haircut. I'll just save you all the jokes. No, I didn't have a court date this morning or anything like that. It was just, today might be laundry day a little later on. And, I've just figured out this would be a good look. It was ready to go. So I'm seeing, is Huss wearing his business PJs today? All business today, definitely in the chat. Listen, Remo, I know we're going to be focusing in on this game and you can kind of keep us up to date on anything that's happening in the Young Stars tourney as we go on. I do want to start off with the Goldeyes because, of course, the championship series for the American Association started on the weekend out in King County, just west of Chicago. And these two games were absolute nail biters, and it was all pitching. Dason Crows was able to plate a run in the ninth inning on Saturday night to tie the game at 1 and get it to extras. Fish ended up losing in, I believe, 11 on Saturday night. And then yesterday, Reem, it was more of the same. I mean, they were no hit, I believe, through 8 innings and lost 1-0. And listen, the pitching has been brilliant. They just haven't been able to get any hits. And now the team's going to come back with their backs against the wall after 2 excruciatingly close losses. There's no tomorrow after Tuesday if they can't find a way to win.
Yeah, home game 1, game 3 of the series tomorrow night at Blue Cross Park. And you would have told them, hey, gave up 3 runs in games 1 and 2. You think you'd have at least one win.
Split.
But unfortunately, you only scored 1 run in those 2 games. And they got no hit for 8 innings yesterday. And the 1-0 loss did have bases loaded in the 9th inning. Unfortunately, Miles Symington grounded out into a double play to end the game. I think in this short series, it's not like a 7-game series where you got to win 4 in a row. Winning, 2 in a row to force at home to force a 5th and deciding game, certainly doable. You see it in Major League Baseball all the time with the 5-game series. I think Twins fans have some good recollections of the Yankees beating up on them year over year. So not over. You got to win 1, and they're on their way back. It was an afternoon game yesterday. They're not leaving at 3:45 a.m. like they did after clinching a trip to the final. So we'll see. Come out tomorrow night. I would expect a big crowd. Very, very, going to be a tight game as you've seen the first 2. Again, we were there. Extremely tight. Very intense. You're hanging on every pitch. I can't wait to see, and I'm sure they'll put out a good effort and try to extend the series tomorrow.
Absolutely. 6:30 p.m. tomorrow at Blue Cross Park. Get your tickets at goldeyes.com. And listen, regardless of what happens in this championship series from here on out, it's been a phenomenal season for Winnipeg after a really uncharacteristically brutal season last year. Logan Watkins has done such a great job with this team, winning the Manager of the Year. And listen, they've been down before. They were down coming back from Sioux Falls, facing elimination. They won 2 straight. They're going to need to do that again to force a 5th and deciding game. It is all about tomorrow. We'll have more on the pitching matchup on tomorrow's game and set it up for you. But Tuesday night, tomorrow, Blue Cross Park, 6:30. Let's get out there and hopefully see a great crowd for the Goldeyes and see if they can force a 4th game on Wednesday in the championship series. One other great local story from the weekend, Remo, came from the Bison homecoming game on Saturday afternoon. Awesome crowd. Just an awesome crowd for the Bisons. Hosting Alberta after that great 2-0 start. And, if you wanted excitement and nail-biting drama, you got it if you were at Princess Auto Stadium on Saturday afternoon. A back-and-forth game between 2 very, very good teams. Bison's up 7 late. Alberta drives it, scores a touchdown, goes for 2, and the Bisons break up the 2-point convert and win 24-23. Was hanging out with a few of the Bison alumni yesterday who were down with the team and some of the coaches afterwards. Needless to say, it was a very, very upbeat atmosphere around the brown and gold on the weekend. And, considering, Reem, that this is Coach Doby's final season in a legendary career here in Manitoba, it's shaping up to be a very special one as the Bisons continue to climb the Canada West and U Sports rankings well into the top 10 right now and now sit on top of Canada West at 3-0.
Yeah, 7,000 there on Saturday to take on the homecoming game at Princess Auto Stadium. No Bombers in action this week, so why not go out Saturday afternoon and enjoy the nice weather with some Bisons football. 3-0 on the season. So I don't know if we talked to Bisons betting lines. I don't know if Cool Bets got U Sports action, but they've not lost a homecoming game in 7 years now, dating back to 2017. So 2 great teams, number 6 Bisons against number 9 Alberta Golden Bears. Nail biter. And credit to Alberta Huss for the Stones going for 2 at the end. You're seeing a lot more teams do that. Why bother chancing it in overtime when you're already at the 2 and you need a 2-point conversion to win. So, even if you didn't get it, you got to like the move. But credit to the Bisons for putting the clamps down and hanging on for the win and move to 3-0.
Yeah, like, listen, I don't know enough about Alberta's roster, about their kicking game. I mean, like, special teams is a lot sketchier in university football than it is in professional football. So, what the heck is that? Sorry. And listen, I mean, it's a ballsy call, but the reason why some teams don't do it is what you saw on Saturday, because sometimes it doesn't work and then you lose after thinking you'll be able to win. Well, and speaking of overtime, as we transition from the Bisons, a crazy week in the Canadian Football League that featured another tie between Calgary and Montreal, a blow-up win by the Hamilton Tiger Cats of all teams. But the most important result when it comes to Winnipeg Blue Bombers fans, Remis, was Chad Kelly and the Argos going in and laying it on the BC Lions on Friday night, which allowed the Bombers to wake up and head to practice this week, still in first place in the West.
Yeah, a lot of Bomber fans conflicted. They had to cheer for the Argos, but you needed them to win against BC, and I thought Nathan Rourke at home, this is prime time for him. Late start, 7 p.m. there, 9 p.m. here, so I enjoyed staying up late and watching that one. But, real tough for Nathan Rourke. I mean, he was under pressure all night. Tremendous play by the D-line of Toronto, sacking him, putting pressure, having to rush throws. It did not go well. 7 sacks for Toronto. And, I thought they were kind of turning the corner. He had a rushing touchdown near the end of the second half, or near the end of the second quarter. And in the second half, they started with Vernon Adams Jr. to switch things up, and it didn't go much better for him. Again, under pressure, and threw an interception. And, I mean, they just ran it out, throwing in third stringer Chase Bryce. Was not a good game for BC at home on a Friday night. Against Toronto, usually you see East traveling West or West traveling East, and it doesn't go the way you'd think. And it definitely, none of the games went the way I thought. We talked about our picks. I reluctantly, took Hamilton on the spread in our thing, and I did not think they were going to outright win, but they did. But
God, we did.
Yeah, it was all the underdogs covering the spread. I want to say winning outright, but that last game, Calgary tying Montreal. It's certainly a victory for Cal. I mean, they probably should have won, but just the way that it had gone for Calgary, a nice bounce back performance for them. But yes, very strange weekend in the CFL. But you look at the top of the standings, the Bombers are there, 7-6, ahead of 7-7 BC.
We'll talk about more of that with Hammer, Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press, when he joins us a little later on, and look ahead to the weekend and Bombers Elks, a matchup that has been building for the last couple months as both of these teams have pulled themselves out of really, really tough starts. You mentioned all three underdogs covering in the CFL, Remis. That sort of was the theme of the entire weekend, because there were some crazy upsets yesterday in the National Football League. I mean, who had the Raiders coming back from down 10 in the fourth quarter to beat the Baltimore Ravens and send them to 0-2? The Rams got absolutely massacred by the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals were like a 1.5 point favorite, but I think a lot of people thought that, listen, the Rams had owned Arizona for a long time. Apparently it matters if you're missing 3 or 4 offensive linemen. They got absolutely smoked yesterday. And the game that we'll talk to with Connor, and I don't want to rub salt in the wounds too much, but I know there's a lot of fired up Viking fans, because Sammy Darts has Minnesota at 0-2 after a big win outright as a dog yesterday, 5-point underdogs to the San Francisco 49ers. And then there's the Saints going in and humiliating the Dallas Cowboys in Big D after they looked so good in week 1. I mean, this was a weird weekend of football, both in the CFL and the NFL, Reem. And of course, we've got an interesting Monday nighter tonight. But what stood out to you from the National Football League slate, which we'll get into a little bit more with Connor later on today?
Yeah, Gardner Minshew leading the Raiders. Well, I'm in a a survivor pool, Huss, where you get 2 strikes. I just look and I'm like, I'm going to take the team that's the biggest favorite. Week 1, I took Cincinnati over the Patriots, strike 1. This week, I looked down the list. I was like, yeah, I could take the Chargers over the Panthers. But no, I'm like, the Ravens at home against the Raiders after a loss? This is 8.5 point favorites. This is a lock. and they lost. So Ravens 0-2, Bengals starting 0-2. How about this stat for the Giants? I enjoyed this. Scored 3 touchdowns, didn't give up a touchdown, and lost to the Commanders 21-18 because their kicker, Graham Gano, was injured, and they couldn't kick. Vikings, big win for them. Aaron Rodgers getting his first win, playing a full game as the Jets starter. What else do we got here? Rookie quarter. What's the rookie quarterback's not getting it done? That's kind of the story. Bo
no
Nix.
TD passes for Bo Nix, for Jaden Daniels, for Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
I felt bad for Williams last night watching the Sunday Nighter. You remember when there was all that talk about whether they should take Romazunia at the 9th pick, or maybe they should take one of the top linemen on the on the board? I think we can look at last night's performance and say maybe they needed the offensive line help, maybe a little more than another top 10 playmaker. They just could not block the Texans, and that Will Anderson was terrorizing Caleb Williams all day long. Texans get the win. Bears did get a perfect textbook backdoor cover, though, which certainly brought a little smile to my face. And then, of course, there was the Bengals-Chiefs game. 26-25 on a walk-off Harrison Butker field goal. And the Bengals now, Remis, at 0-2, have to be livid with themselves that they're not 2-0. I mean, losing at home to New England was inexplicable. But listen, they did what they normally do, and that is play Kansas City really, really tight. They for whatever reason, give Mahomes and that offense some of the biggest challenges they get on an annual basis. But Mahomes finding a way to get it done. And listen, I know there'll be all talk about calls. I mean, anyone that is not maybe a hardcore Bengal fan that watched that last play would agree that it was a pass interference. Now, why you've got a rookie out there with no experience in that situation, rushing 3, giving Mahomes all the time in the world to find a guy and throw a pass, I have no idea. I think the coaches are probably going to regret that, but it certainly was a penalty. And let's not forget that they actually did get the first down on the previous play to Rashee Rice, but were penalized for illegal hands to the face. So, once again, Kansas City just finds a way to win. And when you consider how tough, at least on paper, the start of their season was, home to the Ravens, they escape that one, and then home again to the Bengals, they escape that. They got to be happy with the 2-0 start. But now Pacheco's out. Things are going to get challenging for Kansas City over these next couple of weeks. They got the Falcons next week on Sunday Night Football, and then a big game against the Chargers. But, I mean, Cincinnati just didn't seem to have the composure that you need to have to beat a team like KC. And you saw how mad Joe Burrow was at Jamar Chase for completely losing his cool on that last drive when Cincinnati was trying to go up and, really kind of put the game out of reach. All Chase did was move them back 15 yards, make it a tougher field goal, and of course, giving the ball back to KC. So it was a real nail biter. It was a hell of a football game, as you always get when these teams play. But it is crazy to think that the Bengals and Ravens are both 0-2 right now after really rough starts. And if you look at the history of 0-2 teams since the league went to 17 games, only 3 have made the playoffs in the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, looking at who's 0-2, interesting. A lot of injuries too after week 2. Hustler Justin Jefferson left with an injury. Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown's out tonight. Pacheco, running back for Kansas City, he's out for probably the year. I see a lot of people in our chat debating.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Year.
How long is he? Did he break his leg? What is he out? 4 to 6 weeks?
I have not heard anything. He's going to be out for a little while. Let's just say that
I
Carson Steele and Samaje Perine are going to be heavy ads on the waiver wire this week when people get to Tuesday.
Okay, I got ahead of myself. Minimum 4 weeks. It says a broken leg. I thought it used to put you out for a while, but
Pacheco's built different.
Never mind. I take that. Rewind the tape there. Adam Schefter says on Pat McAfee, he's going to wind up on IR and miss a minimum of 4 weeks. I think it'll be longer than that, but it's not season ending. That's from Adam Schefter. So a lot of injuries. That was a nice finish there down to the wire before that Sunday night game. And that Sunday night game was such a dog shit game.
It sucked.
I'm watching this game. Like, thankfully it was close. It was terrible. No one could do anything on offense. The quarterbacks are getting killed. That's like the game. You know, there's a lot of NFL hardos out there who hate it, like my friends who rag on the CFL all the time. Like, that game was such garbage. And I sat there and watched the entire thing. So that was what happened yesterday. Well, I did too.
And listen, that is why they make point spreads, because that game was interesting. If you had bet either Houston -6.5 or Chicago +6.5, the game itself was never really in doubt. And I mean, my takeaways I mentioned, I mean, the Bears O-line is just not good enough. And, you know, maybe the Patriots are doing the right thing right now, letting Drake May sit back, watch a little bit, and not get killed, because Caleb Williams almost did yesterday. And on the Houston side of things, I mean, that division is horrible. Tennessee sucks. Indy no-showed yesterday against Malik Willis, of all people, in Green Bay. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, after looking great for about 40 minutes of week one, have just completely fallen off. They were brutal yesterday, losing at home to the Cleveland Browns. They're 0-2. And then there's the Houston Texans, and C.J. Stroud still seems like the real deal. And I got to tell you, man, Nico Collins, if he keeps getting the looks that he gets seemingly week by week from Stroud, even with Diggs in the lineup and Tank Dell, he's going to be all pro for sure, and certainly be a fantasy football all-star. So it was a nice win for the Texans. It wasn't that aesthetically pleasing, and let's hope we got a better one tonight when the Falcons and the Eagles go at it at the Link in Philly for Monday Night Football. We will touch on that a little later on. We'll see what Hammer, I'm sure he's got some takes on the NFL. Hammer, of course, Remo, and I think I mentioned this, highly critical of the selection of Gardner Minshew when we were doing our media fantasy draft. And don't look now, but Minshew just went into Baltimore and won. And Minshew is tied for second in passing yards this year in the NFL so far through 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's one thing that's standing out the first 2 weeks, just the lack of passing touchdowns and scoring. This is the lowest numbers since 2019 of passing touchdowns, and you can get a couple, you're going to be up there. We saw Baker leading the league, and yeah, the story of Baker. It's interesting. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, top picks, having success on new teams, but Gardner Minshew, he's a journeyman quarterback, stepping in with the Raiders and leading them for a win. So that
was absolutely unexpected and crazy win, especially considering that they were down by 10, pretty late in the second half, and then scored 3 straight times. Didn't let the Ravens do anything. And now John Harbaugh, they got to play the Cowboys next week at 0-2. I think they've got the Bills in week 4 and then the Bengals in week 5. Murderous schedule early for the Ravens, and that was the one you seemingly thought that they had to have and would get. We'll talk a little more NFL when Connor jumps on in the final half hour of the program. But of course, Remo, Jet fans got a chance to see live hockey action on the week. Well, not necessarily live because it, of course, was in Penticton. But 2 games down and 1 underway as we get going today with the Jets Young Stars tournament. And once again, Brad Lambert continues to turn heads and I think increase the level of excitement for what he can do and show at training camp in his quest to make the National Hockey League and be a Winnipeg Jet when we drop the puck on the 9th of October.
Yeah, Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov, 2 guys who spent last season in the AHL, got called up for that game at the end of the year, and Chibrikov did score. Lambert got a point. They're the guys, scoring for the Jets at this Young Stars. Played Friday, 4-3 overtime win over Calgary. Chibrikov, he scored. Lambert set up Jacob Julian on the power play for a goal, and it was Kuzman scoring on a nice pass from Barlow, 2-0 for the winner. And then yesterday, Brad Lambert showing off that speed and that skill. Beautiful toe drag snipe on a pass from this year's draft pick, Kevin He. And then set up Chibrikov, who had a beautiful one-timer as well to put them up for a 2-0 lead. Wasn't able to hang on. They lost 4-2 to Vancouver yesterday. Lambert not in the lineup today. Lambert, Salamonson getting the night off, or the afternoon off. Lopinen and Walton also getting the game off. They're just rotating guys in and out. But Lambert will be a focus, story in training camp if he can break the Winnipeg Jets roster coming out of it. So, good. You want to see him, have this performance. He played pro last year. A lot of these players, their first kind of experience putting on the jersey, but nice to see him. You see the speed, you see the skill, and you wonder if he can make an impact with the Jets this year.
Well, I can't wait. And Chibrikov as well. I think he really acquitted himself. I mean, those guys did so much last year with the Moose that I think helps them more than anything that's going to happen at this tournament. But the fact that they're both there, doing everything they can to help their stock, shall we say, heading into training camp, I think is a great sign. And, a bunch of the other young players, Jacob Julian got in, Colby Barlow. Normally the sniper set up Dmitry Kuzmin on the OT winner in the first game. So there's a lot to get to, and we're going to talk about that coming up in just a second with Jamie Thomas. Bombers will be back at practice tomorrow, I believe. A big week for the Bombers, a huge game coming up on Saturday. But there is so much going on around the Canadian Football League now that things are tightening up even more coming out of this week. Hammer's going to join me to talk some Bombers. We will have a new CFL 110 on Wednesday, so make sure to stay tuned with that for that. And that, of course, is brought to you by our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg, where the push is on. If you want to have a clean, organized garage this fall into winter before the snow flies, give Garage Living Winnipeg a call at 999-1234. Pat's been getting a ton of calls as soon as back to school hit. People are suddenly seeing all those kids' bikes, hockey and football equipment, you name it, strewn all over the garage. But Garage Living has an innovative solution called Slatwall. Dozens of hooks, baskets, and shelves that clip into it to get everything off your floor. There's even a cool golf club caddy and tire racks to store those winter tires. And the cool thing is you can do as much or as little as you want to fit in your budget. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter, organize and beautify your garage with Slatwall. Garage Living also offers polyaspartic floor coating and made-in-Canada premium metal cabinetry for a total garage makeover. Check out their website at garageliving.com. Pat Canuga is available at 204-999-1234 to book a free in-garage consultation or make an appointment to meet him in their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg. Garages made for living. Had a great sit down with our friends at Rolly's Transfer last week who've got big things happening heading into winter. One thing you can count on, 12 months a year, is the best and most trusted moving services in town from a family-owned and operated company that's been doing it for more than 60 years. That's right. Synonymous with the white glove treatment to get you from your current destination to your new one with everything intact, with great service. Rollies is the place for your next move. Check out their website at rollies.com. Up in the top right corner, there's a request an estimate feature. Click on that and just let them know when and where you're planning on moving, what you're moving, and put in the promo code WST for a special discount for WST listeners on moving services and moving supplies. For your next move, use Rollies. Transfer, the most trusted name in moving and storage for over 60 years right here in Manitoba. Find out more today and request an estimate at rollies.com. I got to thank our friends at Consolidated Supply for their great support of WST over the years and this summer as well. What a summer it has been. But Consolidated Supply is there for you 12 months a year as the leaders in irrigation systems and solutions, not to mention artificial turf, new and used golf carts, and other great options for your property, like hot tubs and incredible outdoor kitchens. They're also the go-to spot for the incredible line of Crest power tools, and they are the leaders in small engine repair and supply. for all those needs, Consolidated Supply has you covered, but you really got to get down and see them in person at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at their website at cte.ca. And just before we head out to Penticton, thanks to our friends at Manitoba Battery. What a summer it's been for Manitoba Battery, powering all those camping trips, boating excursions, ATV rides, and more. None of that happens without power, and Manitoba Battery brings the power, allowing Winnipeggers and Manitobans to shop local, get the best prices in town, period, beating the pants off the big box stores, with great service at their 2 locations now on Logan Avenue and Dovercourt Drive. They'll also simplify it even more and bring those batteries to you for free on any purchase over $60 inside the perimeter of the city of Winnipeg. That's all you need to know when it comes to batteries. Best price in town, shop local, Manitoba Battery, 2 locations, and of course, manitobabattery.com. All right, the puck is dropped right now in the Young Stars' final game for Winnipeg, but before game day today, we caught up with Jamie Thomas a little earlier in Penticton to break down what's been happening on the ice and off the ice, and a little bit of behind the scenes as well from the Jets prospect tournament, Young Stars out in Penticton. Here is Jamie Thomas from just a little earlier today. What's going on? How was your weekend out there in beautiful British Columbia?
Buddy, it's so nice. We just the hotel is probably like a 10-minute walk from our hotel. So Lake Okanagan. It hasn't been like 30 degrees and scorching temperatures like in Winnipeg, but walking by the beach every day. Ran into Henry Nikkanen yesterday. He said he went for a swim. The water's glorious. But I was going to do that, but ran out of time, my friend. And I wish I could tell you some wild and crazy stories. But at 52, I can't ramp it up, buddy. I cannot ramp it up anymore.
You don't have that club in your bag anymore, and that's fine.
No,
that's fine. There's lots of work to be done.
I'm just putting along. That's all I do.
Hey, listen, we're living this tourney vicariously through all of you. And I mean, let's get to it. The Jets got right at it on Friday. Basically, we'd finished the show on Friday and then sort of tuned in. And that was the game against Calgary that was a little back and forth. And then, of course, finished with the sniper, Colby Barlow, ended up being the setup man on a beauty OT winner by Dmitry Kuzmin. Take us back to Friday and fill us in on the opener of the tourney.
Yeah, so I was talking with Mark Morrison, of course, the head coach of the Manitoba Moose, and he says traditionally at this tournament, there's a whole bunch of penalties called because it's just chaos out there because these kids are just trying to make a name for themselves. They're taking their shifts are way too long, so they're tired, and then in their effort to make something happen, something bad happens. That was not the case on Friday because there's 11 guys, I believe, here from the Manitoba Moose. So there's some experience. There's 3 guys here that have played in 3 tournaments already. There's a bunch of more guys that played here last year too. So they seem very settled in the first period, jumped out to a 2-0 lead, and then kind of let things get away in the second period. Calgary tied it up at 2. Third, they exchanged goals. Jacob Julian got a power play goal. Calgary tied it up with a shorthanded goal. And then in overtime, great work by Henry Nikkanen at 3-on-3 at the Jets blue line, forced a turnover. And then it's Colby Barlow and Dmitry Kuzmin breaking out 2-on-0, and Barlow with the old head fake made it look like he was going to shoot, and he passed it across beautifully on the stick of Kuzmin, and he put it in the net. So it was a great start that way. And then you looked at Saturday, they had a practice day, and then yesterday they played the Vancouver Canucks, the host. Now the Canucks, being the host of this tournament, kind of, I don't want to say, they bring their big roster, let's just say. So the American Hockey League team seems to be the opponent, but the Jets played well through the first 2 periods. Another great goal from Brad Lambert. Of course, Nikita Chiprikov's got a couple of goals, so they jumped out to another 2-0 lead. And then Vancouver slowly started taking over. And in the third period, Winnipeg had no ozone time. And talking to Brad Lambert after the game, he said it seemed like they ran out of gas because even though they had 8 shots on goal and Vancouver only had 8 shots on goal, the chances they were giving up, Vancouver had way more ozone time, kind of wore them down. So Vancouver doubles up the Jets 4-2. But Mark Morrison, as a whole, very happy with his group. He put Colby Barlow, Braden Yeager, and Nikita Chibrikov together yesterday. They kind of got things going, but as Mark said, you know, it's a short tournament, so it's not a lot of time for these guys to develop chemistry. He's going to go with those 3 again today against the Edmonton Oilers at 1 o'clock Central Time, and you can watch that at winnipegjets.com. It'll be Mitchell Clinton doing the color analysis.
Yeah, of course, we're going to be following that throughout the afternoon here on the program when we go live. Brad Lambert center of attention coming into training camp this week. And
yes,
by all accounts, Jamie, he has shown why there is a lot of steam behind his chances to potentially be in the mix for an NHL roster spot. How did he look in both games?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like so good. I think it's easy to say, if anybody that's watched the two games, he's been their best player. And that's what Mark Morrison and Craig Heisinger wanted to see from the guys that are playing in their third tournament, like Henry Nikkanen and Daniel Torgerson. Both those players, by the way, in today's lineup against Edmonton, did not play yesterday against Calgary, against Vancouver. But Lambert has dominated the first game, and yesterday against the Canucks, just a great rush up the ice, cut to the middle, wires a shot in, and then on the power play, a seeing eye backhand pass to Nikita Chibrikov, a guy who's played with numerous times on the power play with the Manitoba Moose. And Chibrikov, all he had to do was one time at home. But Lambert has been physical, and that was the conversation, right? He had to win more puck battles. He's winning a lot more puck battles at this tournament so far. So I think the idea was for him to kind of get a jump start for his confidence and get his legs going, his game shape as early as possible, heading into what will be a very interesting training camp with the Winnipeg Jets starting on Thursday.
Listen, we're going to be talking about Lambert nonstop.
Yeah,
at training camp, but I did want to ask you just about his role within the team. Like listen, we kind of spoke last week. A lot of people were surprised that he was even coming to the tournament, and he spoke to getting the invite and accepting it. He's been here a couple times. How is he, from what you've seen, Jamie, is Brad Lambert in a bit of a leadership position here? And how does he seem different just as a man, as a young guy trying to crack the team, as opposed to what you've seen in the previous couple trips out west?
Yeah, for sure. Great question, too, Huss, because as you asked that question about leadership, he is him and Dawson Barteau are the two assistant captains at this tournament. There's no captain. But that is that leadership role that Mark Morrison talked about before we left for Penticton back in Winnipeg. And I think he's taken it to heart. And, in a short tournament like this, where we've already talked about you're trying to make a name for yourself, you're trying to prove yourself to management, to the scouts that have watched you, the people that have drafted you, to the fans that are watching back home, that you're worth that pick. But Brad Lambert's kind of been that quiet leader. Clearly, I'm not in the dressing room, but for them to the coaching staff to give him an assistant captain or an A on his jersey says a lot about what they believe in him and how he's grown as an individual. And that is a big thing, because maturity is such a tough thing for a lot of kids after they get drafted. The Jets want to see more of that. And I think everything that they've asked him to do, like that's put on weight, try to win more puck battles, be a little bit more physical, and have more of a leadership role, I think he's answered the bell so far. Albeit it's early, it's just a rookie tournament. But I mean, I think if another good performance today, I think he's set himself up very well confidence-wise and got the eye of management and the coaching staff as he gets ready for camp on Thursday in Winnipeg.
Well, and listen, speaking of confidence, I mean, I think Brad should have a lot coming in. He talked about the great summer that he had last season playing in the NHL. The other guy that we might not talk about as much that's in a similar situation is Chibrikov. And I'll tell you what, it certainly seemed like he has his confidence fully topped up at this tournament, and that's a good sign for him coming into a big camp.
Yeah, and you speak of guys with experience, and like the one thing, the first two games last year at this tournament, you didn't really notice him, but in the third game, he started becoming more physical and throwing his weight around. He had 10 shots on goal, I believe, in the last game of the tournament here in 2023, and he's just carried that over. He's got goals in back-to-back games. He's been physical. He's got knocked over a couple of times, but he gets up so quickly. And I was speaking with him today after breakfast, and I asked him, because remember, he scored his first NHL goal in the last game of the regular season. I asked him what he did with the puck. He said he doesn't even have it. So he said that he hasn't got it yet, so which I find fascinating. So let you and me and Remis, we got to go talk to the equipment staff, go, where the hell is Chibrikov's puck? Like, come on, the guy needs it. So you, me, Remis, we're going to mess some stuff up in the Jets dressing room.
Find it this week. We'll do a special presentation with them on the show, maybe at FanFest or something like that. It would be it'll be
that's a great idea. We have some questions.
One young man that we expect will use his brilliant shot to score in the NHL at some point. When that is, that's the big question, is Braden Yeager, who came over in the Rucker McGroarty trade. Listen, we had a great chat with him, but this is the first time he's kind of been with the club for an extended period of time. What have you noticed about Jaeger, both on and off the ice with his teammates out in Penticton?
Okay, well, first off, great kid. I think anybody that watched that interview with his first day in Winnipeg, I know he's done numerous interviews since he was been traded to the organization, but just a great guy, very calm. Did a not so long talk with him on the beach the other day. He likes to break down the game. Like I asked him about, your 200-foot game. Mark O'Leary, as head coach of Moose Jaw, said one of the things that he grew was helping out on the penalty kill. And, he broke down exactly how him and Jagger Furcus, were using their offensive mind to help break down the other team's power play in a shorthanded situation. So I think this kid wants to play in all assets and all situations. Really nice guy, great conversationalist, but he's around the puck at all times. And that's all Jets fans want to know. He's a good kid. And he wants to be in Winnipeg, but what can he do on the ice? He's been all around it. And I'm very curious to see with another game, with Nikita Chibrikov and Colby Barlow, what that's going to look like for a second game. Maybe that chemistry will come there, and maybe not so much a line in the future for the Winnipeg Jets, but he's caught my eye for sure, and I'm sure anybody else watches the game has been impressed with Braden Jaeger so far.
What about Kevin He? We had a real nice chat with him at the draft, and it was interesting to see him, in the top 6, even on the top line with Brad Lambert in one of the games so far. Yeah. How's he shown so far?
Yeah, I know. It's when you write articles, when you're doing spell check and you're going through and the key doesn't really work very well. There's always they're trying to punctuate stuff all the time. But he's been tremendous. Another very cordial kid. Always talks to you, shakes your hand, asks you how you're doing. But when I asked him about his game, and I'm sure he's told you this, he's like a dog on the bone. He's everywhere. He's all over the ice. And I think it says a lot about how the Jets feel about him, that they keep putting him with Lambert and seeing what he has. And, he's that one guy that can skate with Brad Lambert because he does have deceptive speed. He is around the puck all the time. He's not afraid to throw his body around. He's not afraid to crash the front of the net. So it's been, for a guy that wasn't really talked about a lot heading into the draft outside of his heritage, I think he's really quietly made a good name for himself and caught the eyes of management. Because Mark Hillier was on the broadcast the other day. He's really liked how how he's brought his game here to Penticton so far.
Couple other forwards I wanted to ask you about, and one guy that really had a breakout season last year. I mean, a lower pick, but I think has really improved his stock with the club. Is Jacob Julian after his year last year in London? And I believe he scored on the weekend. I mean,
he sure did.
How's Jacob acquitting himself?
He's doing pretty good, right? I think he comes from Junior B and goes to the Ontario Hockey League 2 seasons ago before the Jets drafted him, and he gets a long playoff drive in with the London Knights. And we all know how great of a job Mark Hunter does creating NHL talent with the London Knights in the Ontario Hockey League. So he's in a good place. But last year he took a big step, and we've gone over this many times about 70 plus points, goes all the way to Memorial Cup final. Well, the one thing where Jacob Julian one of his benefits is he always wants to get better. Like he wants to be a better faceoff guy. He's a natural center. Played the second line center with the Knights last year. Has played a little center here so far. Here he'll be on the wing this afternoon against Edmonton. But I've really liked his game so far. But I think Chibrikov and Lambert have kind of stolen the show here so far, but it's been Jacob Julian has certainly been noticeable so far, and curious to see. I get the sense that he'll be going back to London for his 20-year-old season, but that has yet to be determined. One
other forward, just before we pivot to the D and the net minding, that I wanted to ask you about is another guy that was picked in Vegas, an intriguing prospect. I mean, the Jets grabbed him late, but Kieran Walton, I remember talking with him afterwards.
Yes,
and, he is a big
monster.
Big young man. This is certainly a step up, I think, from where he's been playing at before. But just any observations on the big OHL product?
Well, Huss, Kieran Walton is big. Certainly an impressive specimen. But at the same time, what you want to know is, can he move? And he's very light on his feet on the ice. He gets to the front of the net, just a big body. Has he been crashing around as much as maybe you would expect him to? Maybe not. But I think this is all about working through your emotions, your nerves. He's a really nice kid, but man, Mark Hillier talked about his offensive abilities too, and that's what you want to hear from a guy that is so big, and it's going to be tough to get, stop from getting to the front of the net, but he does have some offensive flair to him as well. So very impressed with the big kid from the Sudbury Wolves in the Ontario Hockey League.
Moving to the blue line, I mean, the one guy that, obviously is getting the majority of the looks and attention is Elias Salomonsson. What was his weekend like heading into the finale today?
I think, he had a great game, very impressive against the Calgary Flames, but like everybody else in that third period against the Canucks kind of dropped off. So maybe he ran out of gas. It's a tough schedule, buddy. Like they play at 4:00 on Friday, played at 2:00 local time, and they're going to play at 11 this morning here in Penticton. So it's all jammed in. He will not play against the Edmonton Oilers. Mark Morrison has taken him out probably just to save him for main camp coming up on Thursday. But for the most part, you see where I think the one thing that doesn't get talked about Elias Salomonsson is his offensive abilities. And there's a great play on Calgary on Friday where he took the puck, facing the offensive end of the ice inside the Flames blue line, took it, just spun around lightly and made a nice play afterwards. So he's really good with the puck, and I think that's the deceptive part of his game. He's a big body. I think obviously there's a lot of pressure on him as he makes his big jump to North American hockey this year in the smaller ice surface. But I think all the confidence you get from winning a Swedish Elite League championship, I think that should carry over into his debut in North America.
Just a quick thought on the rest of the blue line. And we saw Kuzman with the OT winner. Former ice defenseman Ben Zlotty's getting a chance to show what he can do at camp as well.
Yeah.
I mean, a player or two that sort of stand out to you outside of Elias from the blue line?
Yeah, Ben Zlotty played his first game yesterday. So I'm losing track of time here. But, he's really good with the puck. Like he span off a forward yesterday in the offensive zone and dropped a perfect saucer backhand pass on a forward stick in the slot area. So, and he's not afraid. He threw a backhand pass across the ice through the neutral zone that was right on the stick. So he's got some offensive ability as well. But, Kuzman is back in the lineup again today against Edmonton. Really like how he played. He's got a big year in front of him after yo-yoing up and down between Norfolk and Manitoba. So, those are just Dawson Barteau again, very solid defenseman. Again, as I mentioned earlier, has been the assistant captain in all the games so far in this tournament. And I know where we're going next. We've got to talk about the goalies.
For sure. Listen, there might not be NHL opportunity to be a starter for the foreseeable future in Winnipeg with Connor Hrabchak's extension. However, the Jets do have a pretty exciting young tandem representing them in Penticton with both Milic and DiVincentis, who will be first year as a professional. Fill us in on the netminders.
Yeah, for sure. And Thomas Milic was great on Friday. Like talking with Craig Heisinger in the first intermission or second intermission of that game, he said the one thing about Milic is it'll be 3-3, and he might have let in 3 goals, but he's not going to let in that fourth. And he was tremendous when Calgary started pressuring the Jets in the second period, and was great. Didn't get tested in overtime, but he'll start the game against Edmonton this afternoon. So I think it's just a carryover. Not a lot of pressure on him last year, right? He just comes up from Norfolk, was supposed to stay in the East Coast Hockey League, so Manitoba has some troubles. And net he comes in, not a lot of expectations, but helps lead them into the playoffs. So maybe a little heavier this year in terms of expectations. And then for Dominic DiVincentis, couldn't really fault any of the goals that were allowed against him yesterday. There was a couple of nasty bounces in the favor of the Vancouver Canucks. Had a slow start last year, Huss. After being the Ontario Hockey League goaltender of the year, a lot of people thought he was going to be starting for Canada at the World Juniors. That didn't turn out. And then he really put it together. Some long conversations with Drew McIntyre, the goaltending guru of the Manitoba Moose and the organization. Some conversations about what he has to do differently, maybe change his perspective on certain things. But he really turned around the second half of the season for the North Bay, who I've led him to the playoffs. Unfortunately, got hurt in the first, I believe the first round or second game. Did not play for the rest of the playoffs, but he seems to be carrying another role. Era of expectation and certainly an aura of confidence as well as he heads into another year with the Winnipeg Jets organization.
Well, listen, Milic is sort of 1 year ahead of him, and we saw him start in the East Coast League, play very well, and finish up carrying the mail for the Manitoba Moose. So I think the blueprint is sort of there for what's to come for DiVincentis. One guy we haven't seen in games, but did shed the yellow jersey for practice is Chaz Lucius.
Right.
What's up with Chaz? Positive developments? Do we think he'll be able to participate in training camp? What are you getting from the coaching staff on Lucius?
Yeah, he took off the old yellow jersey, and Mark Morrison told us that he hates the yellow jersey in particular.
I'll bet he does.
And I'm talking Morrison can't stand it. Lucius is tired of wearing it, so he did not take part of contact drills on Saturday when the Jets had a full practice. but he's in there skating with his teammates. Is he getting close enough? That the ankle's getting better, but I think they want to make sure this is because of all the injury history that he has. They want to make sure that he's there before they get him in at main camp. But, it's got to be frustrating for him. It's got to be frustrating for the organization, because when he's healthy, we've seen the magic, and he's got a big body, and he's so talented with the puck on his stick, goes all the right areas. So I think we're all excited to see what a fully healthy Chaz Lucius can provide for the organization. I just don't have a timetable exactly what that's going to look like.
Yeah, no one probably more anxious to get out there than Lucius himself,
sure.
Considering the bad luck he's had for the last few years. So, Jamie, obviously we're going to be following this game this afternoon. Afterwards, what the fellas get on the bus? You head to, Kelowna and then back home?
Yeah. So we're busing to Kelowna, eating lunch there, getting on the plane, fly to Calgary, then fly to Winnipeg. We'll be home about 1 o'clock this morning. So here we go.
And I guess do they play tomorrow, or will it be a day off and then get ready for physicals and everything else that comes along with training camp for the players that will be taking part?
Yeah, I think the majority, I believe, of this group has already had their physicals. So I think my idea probably is they're certainly going to have Tuesday off, and then maybe get on the ice for some light skating as they get ready for main camp. But pretty hectic schedule for the young guys.
You got it. Well, hey, listen, we really appreciate you jumping on with us early out in BC. Enjoy the game this afternoon. Travel safely back. Let's go Jake Elliott for 26 kicker points tonight, and I can maybe get a miracle win versus you in fantasy.
I was so close to not starting Marvin Harrison Jr. because I was so pissed about the way he played in the first game. And off he goes.
I wish you overreacted like that many people did.
Well, like last year? No, that's not happening again, buddy.
You deserved something good to happen after what happened to the Dolphins on Thursday night.
We're not going to talk about that.
I will look forward to seeing you down at the rink later on this week for training camp, and of course Fan Fest coming up on Saturday. Thanks, Jamie.
All right, buddy. See you later, Remis.
All right, thanks to Jamie for jumping on with us from Penticton before the game. We'll keep you up to date on that one throughout. Now, Remis, one other, and again, we'll get into this a little bit more with Hammer. He's going to jump on with us in about 5 minutes or so, get his thoughts on the Jets situation as well. The one thing that didn't change on the weekend, and I was a little hopeful that, Monday, Tuesday, we might be getting the news of a press conference to announce an extension for Cole Perfetti. That has not happened yet. But this is a really interesting tidbit from Elliot Friedman, who wrote about a number of the RFA situations in the league today. Here's what Elliot had. One executive called the Winnipeg Cole Perfetti negotiation, quote, the politest in recent memory. Perfetti went to the NHLPA media tour. I can't remember an unsigned player doing that before, and represented his team this weekend at a charity fishing event. Perfetti reiterated he is not unhappy with the Jets and wants to stay. I don't think term is the problem here. A few sources, both on team side and agent side, said Shane Pinto's Ottawa extension is a challenge for Winnipeg as the two have similar career numbers. Now, Pinto did do the shorter-term deal, so maybe that is where they're at. I don't know. I've still sort of just with the time it's been taken and everything else around this, I thought that, I'm still, I guess if I had to bet, I'll go 55 on the long term, although I seem to be in the minority amongst the others that I'm talking about. But bottom line is, Remis, all parties would love to hear some conclusion for this in the next 2 days so Cole doesn't miss any time on the ice with his teammates.
Yeah, all we're hearing is, he wants to be a Jet, the, politest negotiation. Well, we're 2 days away from camp, and there's no contract. And the Jets have their, team golf tournament today. I see them posting pictures of Dylan Sandberg looking pretty good in his golf attire. Here, Nikolai Ehlers. And Perfetti's not out there. He's skating on his own, getting ready for the season because he was in Vegas last year. And physicals and all that, medicals Wednesday. The deadline's here. He's got to be ready to go. So
TikTok. Here's the pressure point. Agent Chevy, This is the pressure point you were waiting for. Let's come together and get 91 in camp.
Well, you mentioned Shane Pinto. He signed a 2-year deal, $7.5 million, $3.75 million AAV. Look at his career stats. 140 career games, 70 points. Perfetti, who's a year younger, he turns 23 January 1. He's a higher draft pick as well. He's also played 140 career games, 75 points. So I'm sure they're saying, hey, Shane Pinto signed this year 3.75 AAV. Well, I got 5 more points in the same number of games as Shane Pinto. Give me whatever contract, whatever 5 points over 2 years is. You guys figure it out, but it shouldn't be the same. What was reminds me of Jamar Chase's line, said that he wanted one more penny than Justin Jefferson, or he says he didn't actually say. Who knows about that? But I'm sure you look at comparables around the league, and we'll see what happens. I mean, he's not the only RFA. Detroit's got a couple Swaymans, the other big one. But training camp starting, that's a big pressure point, and we'll see what happens. But maybe kind of surprising that you hear, hey, he wants to be a Jet. Hey, negotiations are so polite, but where's the contract here? Why isn't
time for the rubber to hit the road on this sucker? And I'm still holding out hope it might be a longer term extension, so we don't go through all of this in 2 years. But as I said, I guess we'll wait and find out. Actually, Perfetti talked to Ryan Leslie last week about his contract coming out of the Vegas bid. Here's what Cole had to say just a few days ago about where things were at.
Yeah, it's been obviously a work in progress. I know both sides are working on something, and hopefully it's going to get done soon. And I was saying earlier today in an interview, my mindset's kind of just been worried about the start of the season. I can't control anything that's happening behind the scenes and the business part of it. So I'm just getting prepared for the season and mentally and physically prepping myself to be ready come opening night, and that's kind of my goal and my mindset right now.
But you're here, you're wearing the threads, obviously an encouraging sign. Yeah,
of course. Obviously, I want to be here, and I want to be a part of this, a big part of this organization. So, when they asked me to do this, I thought it was a no-brainer, and it's a great experience for myself and a big learning experience. So, I thought it was I thought it's going to be a lot of fun, and it has been so far. So, hopefully, some figures its way out here soon.
All right, here's one more from Perfetti as well from that conversation. And, obviously much has been made about, kind of hitting the wall last year in the second half of the season and being out of the lineup at times under Rick Bowness. Here's Perfetti on what he learned through, a tough time in the second half of last year's campaign.
That kind of felt like rock bottom in the career so far, getting scratched like that. So that was obviously a bummer. And I'm just trying to, learn from that and to kind of make it so that never happens again. That's kind of the mindset and the goal. But obviously there were some ups and downs, and every player goes through it as a young guy, and it's part of the learning curve of the NHL. And I think there's nothing's going to go ever smooth. Like, it's going to be some a little bumpy along the way, and that's kind of how it went last year at the end. But like I said, there's lots to learn from that, and there's lots to grow from that, and that's kind of my mindset, is just take the positives from it, take the confidence I got from the summer, and just try to hit the ground running.
All right, so there's Cole Perfetti, still without a contract, not golfing today, skating, working out, getting ready to, hopefully getting his hand ready to sign a contract and then get out to training camp with his teammates later on this week at the Hockey for All Center. Don't forget, big day on Saturday, Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest on Saturday morning. We will be there, set up live. I know I assume the IC guys will be there doing their show. We're actually going to do the show from Hockey for All Center on Friday as well. So we'll have lots of the sights and sounds of training camp, and then, of course, Fan Fest, and then the first preseason game of the year on Saturday evening downtown at Canada Life Center. Remo, what is this? Do we need to get the buff update for people, or do we need to save that for later on today?
We got to get to Jeff. This is an end of show.
Okay, perfect.
Topic.
Connor's coming up. We do have a buff update. Not necessarily getting your hopes up that he's returning to playing at all, but
not hockey related.
For those of us that are wondering what the heck Buff has been up to, stay tuned for that. We'll come up a little bit later on. But we do want to get to Jeff Hamilton. We'll get his thoughts on Perfetti and coming camp, and of course the Bombers, who got a big favor from the Argos on the weekend. Bison's got their big win at Princess Auto Stadium. we'll have to wait an extra week to get back to Princess Auto Stadium because, of course, they're playing on the road this week. However, Princess Auto is still very, very busy this week because, of course, it is the Mega Smasher sale right now. Princess Auto, up until September 22nd, has some of the best deals of the season and everything you need to get the job done around your shop, garage, at home, or at work. They had the demo days on the weekend. You can still pop down and the friendly Princess Auto staff will work you through so many of the deals on sale. But big promotions right now, a 60-gallon Sanborn air compressor for $788, and you'll get a $101 Princess Auto gift card. That's in-store only, as well in-store only. The 3400 PSI wet jet pressure washer for $899, and you'll get a $201 gift card. Other great deals at the Mega Smasher include 15-inch trailer tires for only $98, and save $600 on the 26-inch Bozeman sawmill, and grab a trailer while you're at it. Visit your local Princess Auto store today up until the 27th, or shop online at megasmasher.ca. A big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club. I'll give a little congratulations to my friend Mo and Melissa, who did a little wedding celebration on the weekend. Much revelry was had, and of course, when you're having an event like that, you gotta have the good stuff, and that, of course, is Canadian Club, Canada's favorite and oldest Canadian whiskey. Got a few of those in me, along with some great company over the course of the weekend. And listen, Canadian Club is the #1 whiskey in Canada for a reason. Been around since 1848, and of course, a big favorite of Bomber fans, is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Available at Princess Auto Stadium, throughout the stadium at all games, along with Canadian Club and ginger ale. And you could pick up the great taste of Canadian Club at your local Manitoba liquor marts, and keep your eyes peeled for CC and ginger ale the next time you pop into your local beer store. I do want to thank the folks at Wallace & Wallace. They've been building fences pretty much for the entire city this year. Well, frankly, they've been doing it since 1946 as the leaders in the industry. But if you have the need for a new garage door, Wallace & Wallace is also the place for that. Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors is available as the Clopay dealer in Manitoba. And if you're looking for a perfect fit with your home that will add value to it as well, give Wallace & Wallace a call for that, or all your fencing needs. They'll come out and give you a free estimate by calling 452-2700. You can also pop by and see them at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Penticton. And just before we bring in Hammer, shout out to the fellas down at F Apparel. Fall is pretty much here, gang, and if you are looking into your closet, realize you need to up your menswear game, don't wait. Get down to F Apparel. Custom suits starting at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married at some point in the future or in a wedding party, talk to the guys about a 15% discount when the fellas get their suits for the big day at F Apparel. They're at 190 Smith Street. Find out more online or make an appointment at F. That's EPH apparel.com. All right, Monday, you know what that means. It's Hammer time, and Jeff Hamilton joins us. Hammer, what's up? How was your weekend?
My weekend was great, Huss. I didn't watch as much NFL football as I had maybe hoped. I took in actually a polo game out in Birds Hill, if you can believe, of all places. It was actually it was awesome. It was a great experience. My partner's friends with people who participate, so went out to Birds Hill. It was
This
awesome,
had a date written all over it. I mean, there was absolutely no doubt.
It was awesome, man. It was really cool. Unfortunately, it was the last games of the regular season, so I'd love to pitch it for spectators to go check out. I think it's certainly worthy of it. The price is right. It costs nothing to watch. And it's a pretty unique sport. It takes you way back, to a time where I think I was Googling it. I think it might've been in the Olympics, and it was taken out because the sport was too expensive in the late 30s. So it's an interesting
It's like hockey now.
It's like hockey now, 100%. That was the hockey game of the era, where it was impossible to afford just playing the sport. So, yeah. But it was a great weekend, man. It was awesome. It was great CFL. I did watch a lot of sports. Weather has been great. I've been taking full advantage of it. And I love my Mondays off, too, because I just dive into all the things I did wrong in fantasy football, and I rethink, certain strategies in my, other endeavors, and it allows me to research, and of course my hit with you. So looking forward to it.
You missed, there it is. I can't wait in 2 years, Jeff. You're going to be full-fledged polo guy. Like, you'll probably be playing weekly, with
you know me.
Now that you're in the tax bracket that can be polo guy,
you'll be able to pull it off. Have you just pushed me a class or two? That's amazing. I've been knighted by you on the show.
That's exactly right.
As somebody who, is better than everybody else, I guess. If that's what you're designating me.
Well, you missed a wild NFL afternoon, including your guy Gardner Minshew leading the Raiders back from down 10 against
your listeners' ears with that comment. I feel like it warrants significant context. I was chirping you across the table at Silver Heights Restaurant, no free ads. And you picked Gardner Minshew for your fantasy team. And I chirped him as a fantasy selection, and you countered by saying, well, hey, he could be some great trade bait down the road. Now, I think maybe this performance is maybe a step in the right direction of one day potentially somebody's
second in passing in the NFL
going horribly wrong that you would trade for Gardner Minshew. But like I said in our private chat, I'll say publicly, start him this week. Start him this week, Huss.
Well, he can't start for my team. That's why I'm kind of holding and waiting for someone else to be desperate for a quarterback, and then have Gardner. Much like the Raiders were desperate for a quarterback, and they've turned to him. I can't believe they came back and won that game. All jokes aside, the Ravens at 0-2 was. I did not see Gardner Minshew authoring 3 straight scoring drives as the Raiders shut down the Ravens in Baltimore and got that win. On CFL for a minute, and again, we'll get into this a lot more come CFL 110 on Wednesday. But holy smokes, did Chad Kelly and the Argos do the Bombers a favor on Friday night? I mean, I really felt after that win in Montreal that BC was rolling, Nathan Rourke was rolling, and not only weren't, but when they finally got it going, and Nathan Rourke, the last time he touched the football, he was running a touchdown in and getting them on the board. Toronto goes back, scores at the end of the half, and then Rick Campbell throws out VA in the third quarter. Like, I'm not saying that you could have never gone that way. It just seemed a very strange time to do it after Rourke had finally got the team in the end zone. Just thoughts on that game, what it means for the Bombers, but also what's going on in BC.
Oh, I got so many thoughts, Huss. Well, first of all, you're right. BC did Winnipeg a massive favor. Winnipeg got to stay in first place despite being idle. So there's your kind of first starting point, absolutely. But the Argos didn't do a lot of favors for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who suddenly are now winners back-to-back weeks. But anyways, besides that, I think I don't know what Rick Campbell was thinking, heading into the second half. Was Nathan Rourke playing well? No, he wasn't. They weren't, as you mentioned, he did muster a drive, which he capped off with his own rushing touchdown, a great rushing touchdown too, find the outside, kind of vintage Nathan Rourke a little bit. But then to go with VA, it seemed like a guy who was making what he thought was a calculated guess that, his number one guy wasn't on today, right? Nathan Rourke had just finished up two pretty strong performances, and just maybe didn't have it. And maybe that's was Rick Campbell's, way of being like, okay, this is why we have two top end caliber quarterbacks, that when one guy doesn't have it, we can go to him. But I think he needed to realize really quickly that VA did not have it going for him. I think that was pretty apparent after the first couple series. And, I think he could have gone back to Nathan Rourke and might have given his team a better shot of winning that game or competing in that game. I thought it was just a bizarre mix. And then for, Rick Campbell to talk about how it's up to him to kind of handle those quarterbacks. This is what we talked about for weeks, that this was going to be the biggest challenge for Rick Campbell, and that he had experience, and he touched on that experience. He didn't get to talk about it specifically in Ottawa, but he talked about how, he'd handled 2 top-end quarterbacks. And if this is his answer for it, I just, I don't know what he's doing. Nathan Rourke, again, I don't think was playing so dismally that you would have pulled him automatically in that game. I think I would have given him another series or 2 to see if he could build off some of the momentum and then go to Vernon Adams. Vernon Adams, I'd said on CFL 110 a couple of weeks, Huss, that he was in the perfect situation to just sit idle. And I think that's why he was kind of, he wasn't tossing things in the dressing room and getting upset about, his sudden demotion to number 2, is that if he just sat there and watched Nathan Rourke compete, came in when they needed him to come in, sparingly, as you would often use a number 2 quarterback traditionally, and he would have walked into this open arms of several teams in the offseason who would have wanted to put him, ink him to a 2-3 year contract at, high end number 1 quarterback money. I'm not saying that that's not in Vernon Adams' future here, but he played awful. He looked horrible. He looked like the guy who was playing bad football when he got injured, and why they ultimately decided to bring Rourke in. And, again, I'm not saying that VA ruined his complete, profile to the rest of the league, but his stock is, in my opinion, is down. And I think he was thrown into a situation where the offensive line wasn't helping out Nathan Rourke. Certainly didn't help out Vernon Adams afterwards. And then, to go to your 3rd quarterback, it just seemed like a sloppy effort from Rick Campbell. But, at the same time, you can't really blame the coach either. He was getting sloppy performances from both of his quarterbacks and his offense as a whole.
Well, by calculation, just knowing where things are at, the BC Lions losing to go to 7-7. If the Bombers can go 4-1 in their final 5 games, they'll finish first in the West. Mm-hmm. But of course, this starts off with 2 very difficult games against the Edmonton Elks, who are night and day different than they were when they were finding ways to lose through those first 7 games. I had someone ask about injuries right now for the Bombers, and I guess we'll probably get a little more clarity when the team returns to practice. But are you hearing anything coming out of the bye week into practice week about, in particular, Stanley Bryant, who, I think is, they would really like to see get back Patty Neufeld, as well as, and I mean, who are the guys that you'll be saying, okay, roll call, who are the guys that'll be out there practicing tomorrow, just as far as, coming out of the guys that needed that bye week to hopefully get back on the field? Yeah,
I mean, I don't think you're, the obvious one, of course, is Chris Streveler. He's out for the season. He announced that over this bye week. So, I guess the news is really Jake Dolegala and Brian Scott coming into Winnipeg. We'll see how that's figured itself out this week. As far as, both guys are on the roster. If one's on the practice roster, obviously one needs to be on the roster, whether they handle short yardage or not. The Bombers need a 3rd quarterback. They never had one on their PR to call up. The injuries, no good, you're not getting any good news from Adam Bighill. He continues to be in a fight, to play this season. Still highly unlikely, incredibly doubtful that he does that. I think another guy who went down at the end to keep an eye on was Drew Woltarski. He was banged up in the game. We'll see. I think he could have used the bye week as much as anybody, just come back from, an injury not too long before with his shoulder. And so we'll see what happens there. He's certainly a guy to keep an eye on. Patrick Neufeld, I think there was a moment in that game where he had to sideline and figure out whether he was going to be able to come back in. He came back in, was fine and spoke after the game. So I don't expect any, issues from him. If anything, he would have used this bye week to get ready. So I don't expect any absence from him. Trying to think, Gabe Wallace was a guy who got injured before. Probably no update on him and his status with his knee injury. I'm sure he's out for the foreseeable future here as well. I'm trying to think of anybody else who might be on the injury list, but that kind of comes. I think that's everybody that comes to mind on both sides of the ball. I think the team is actually in a pretty good situation now. I think if you're thinking about the health overall of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I think your focus has always been high on Zach Collaros and keeping him healthy and upwards and all that. I think it doubles, if not triples down heading into these games and ensuring that he's good to go and is going to be around for this playoff push. And, the Bombers suddenly in a prime position to put themselves atop the West by the end of the year and, find that route to the Grey Cup again that they've so much enjoyed over the last couple of years. So that's probably the big one. But I think, as far as health goes, we'll see if we'll see where we're at. But I think the Bombers outside of, Adam Bighill and Chris Strevler being the big names, I think they're getting there.
Yeah, and and we'll touch on this on Wednesday on CFL 110, but you mentioned Hamilton getting that win. Unfortunately for them, Toronto won. Hamilton goes to Toronto, and for all intents and purposes, they have to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. So that'll be a big one in the Canadian Football League this week. We've also got Saskatchewan and Calgary. Calgary with that tie, still technically sort of stays in it. But this to me is a must-win game for the Saskatchewan Roughriders if they want to salvage anything from a season that started so well. You got Montreal, Ottawa, and then Winnipeg and Edmonton on Saturday night, Jeff. And, we've kind of been looking ahead to these home and homes for the last few weeks, but it was impossible to get past the Banjo Bowl and the Labor Day Classic. Now we're here. It's as interesting a home and home series I can remember in the division in a long, long time. Just based on where both of these teams started, but where they are now, both in the division and in comparison to everybody else. I mean, if you just tuned into the CFL after 6 or 7 weeks or 8 weeks when the Bombers were 2-6, and you didn't know what had happened before, you would probably think that these are the two best teams in the Canadian Football League. Something's got to give this week, whether it's the Bombers' 5-game winning streak, whether it's the Elks stretch right now. What are you looking for from the Bombers and Elks on Saturday night before we get back to Princess Auto Stadium? Because it really is a huge opportunity. If the Bombers can win this game, the road game puts them in a great spot to potentially sweep this, but also will give them that game over BC. They already have the tiebreaker. To me, this is a huge, huge game and a huge opportunity for Winnipeg. But, man, it's not going to be easy. Anyone taking the Elks lightly hasn't been paying attention for the last 2 months.
Yeah, I think, it's the ramifications of this game, even just outside of these own two teams. As you mentioned, Huss, you have two of the hottest teams in the league. I'm looking at a lot of different power rankings through different publications, and a lot of respect, obviously, still for Montreal, even though they're starting to dip now, winless in their last 2 weeks. And then a lot of them have Winnipeg and Edmonton, kind of right after them, and two teams that, if you look at the standings, are not second and third. Well, certainly not Edmonton, but have been playing like a playoff team. And I mentioned the ramifications outside of these two clubs. I mean, you talk about schedule watching. I mean, if you look at the Bombers, if they lose this game, certainly BC is going to be rooting for Edmonton to help them out so they can compete in the West, and that goes probably tenfold for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and obviously Calgary, who also want to catch up to Winnipeg. But that being said, that the Elks are catching up to them, so it's almost kind of this: you hope that they win, you hope they separate, you hope that they give you help, but you're going to get right back into it that following week, and you need to win games. That's ultimate. You hear a lot of teams, particularly in the West, that are saying we still control our destiny, and that's true, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy here because each week is going to have, whether it's Edmonton playing Winnipeg, whether it's Saskatchewan playing Calgary, is all going to have a ripple effect in what's been a super tight West division, what feels like a photo finish down here in the last 5-6 games.
Well, and what is so nuts is that with BC losing and now on the bye this week, if Edmonton were to beat the Bombers, we would go into the following week with Edmonton and Winnipeg playing here at Princess Auto Stadium, with BC and Winnipeg at 7-7 and the Elks at 6-8, and conceivably could get into a tie for first place in that week. So while it looked like they were dead, frankly, it looked like the Bombers were dead to many as well. The demise has been greatly exaggerated, and it sets up a huge weekend and a massive, massive game for both Winnipeg and Edmonton. That is going to be a 6 o'clock start, Winnipeg time, on Saturday Of course, the Jets getting the preseason underway that night as well. We'll save the rest of the CFL topics as we get ready for CFL 110, which will be live here on YouTube right after Winnipeg Sports Talk on Wednesday. Make sure to check that out. Shout out to our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg for the support of that show. But we've also got training camp this week. I know you haven't probably been glued to what's happening at the Prospects tournament, but are you surprised that we're still talking about Cole Perfetti not getting, the fact that he hasn't signed a deal yet, despite all the reports of how polite, I believe, Elliott termed the negotiations? I mean, are you expecting something in the next couple days, or might this be a bit of a standoff that kind of does drag into training camp for one of the Jets' most important young players?
I just don't, I found that to be as humorous as I'm sure a lot of people did, the polite negotiations between both sides. And I'm sure they are very polite. Both sides
very
have
polite.
like a little bit of leverage, and both sides have a reason to sign and to reach a deal, right? And I don't think they're so far off in their number, right? They both want to shave and get where they want to get to, but I think it's going to come down to both kind of being like, all right, enough chicken from both our sides. Let's, if we can't reach a long-term deal, let's just pull out this bridge deal that I think we've been talking around probably for too long. And I mean, I'm not shocked by it. I'm certainly not surprised by it, because it's not the first time it's happened, right? It's not the first time that the Winnipeg Jets have had, somebody in this situation, whether it be, Josh Morrissey before that went into training camp, whether it's Jacob Trouba that went into training camp. And the fact that this one doesn't seem to be as contentious as those two others, I think Josh Morrissey's a little bit less. I think Jacob Trouba's had a bit more, punch to it, if you will, just because of some of the sound bites that were coming out of it. But, these are, both sides know what they want. Both sides know they need each other. I mean, Cole Perfetti can't take a season off. He can't take any more time away. I mean, there's opportunity for him knocking at the door for him to just, come into and certainly compete for, but he's going to get that chance right off the bat. I mean, this is a guy who was healthy scratched during the most important part of the season. And yet he was also a guy who was on the cusp of 20-goal season and has those comparable numbers to look at others around the league and say, hey, I'm worth this much, or I'm pretty darn close, or this is only a 2-year deal. And then you have the Winnipeg Jets who could use, who are comfortable with this kind of negotiations, as we've seen in the past, and it's worked out, and it's led to further, longer extensions down the road, as it did for Josh Morrissey. But I also think that, they need a victory here. They need to show the public, even the fan base, that guys want to stay here and that they can sign their guys, and especially after the Rutger McGroarty stuff and whatever. So I think there's certainly, and especially when you factor in that he's the Jets representative at the league event, that he's doing, specifically Jets related fundraisers and events for them. Like, that just goes to show that both sides want to reach a deal. It just, these things can take time. They take a little bit of chicken. They take, I'm sure the Jets are thinking exactly what I just said, that, why would Cole Perfetti not take this or not take that? And I also think there's a little bit of risk on the Jets side for a long-term deal, right? I think that, if you're looking at Cole Perfetti and you're looking at the salary cap and its inevitable rise in the years to come here, $6.5 million doesn't seem like a bad deal. But you're also looking at a player that, more often than not in his time in Winnipeg has been injured and has been, required extra coaching to prevent himself from future injury, whether that's, his responsibilities on the boards and not turning and stuff like that. So there is a bit of a risk factor with Cole Perfetti. I mean, look at the guy. He's a very talented, high IQ guy, but he doesn't look very durable. So, you obviously have to measure that back and forth. And before you start throwing out 6-year deals at $6 million plus, you need to know and be sure of, where he fits and how he fits into your system. So, I'm sure all these questions have answers to them. And I'm sure there's a contract here ready to be signed. And I would not be surprised if it got signed right on the eve here, or if it took a few days, but I would not project this one to take too long.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely, and I'm sure Cole is probably saying to his agents, do what you have to do, but please. Let's figure this out in the next couple days because I do want to be out there. I want to hit the ground with my best.
And he's probably got
forward.
a little bit of that Mark Scheifele feeling too, right? Like if he's looking at a $3.75 million, deal next year or a $6 million deal next year, he's finally getting into that stage of his career where he's banking millions of dollars a season. So it's all good news for him. It's just he's got to figure out what's best for him because Mark Scheifele, if he could do it all over again, he'd probably do things a little bit differently. Now he was in a different situation as Cole Perfetti, but again, these are the you have this pile of money that's being tossed in front of you and you're forced to make a decision and you're really asking, all of a sudden you've been gambling and banking on yourself all your life and now you're faced with this decision where it's like, do I continue to gamble on myself and maybe make more money, or do I take a pretty nice nest egg here that's sitting right in front of me? So we'll see what happens.
It is sometimes hard to say no to 25 or 30 million bucks. Not that I have any experience in doing that, but I would imagine.
Well, especially with a guy with his history, right? I mean,
100%.
you don't think Mark Scheifele was thinking about going down with another knee injury that season if he didn't sign this 8-year deal? Like he knew what the risks were, and again, like it worked out for him and whatnot, and he signed another big contract, but. There's lots of things that are going through the minds of both sides.
Hey, you got any lean on this Monday nighter tonight? Eagles, Falcons?
I'm going to be selfish here, Huss. Of course, what
do you need?
I have Drake London in one league where I don't, and I'm against him in another, and I don't think I'm going to win with the one. So I just kind of want Drake London to have a quiet night. I don't know. I just think Philly is the cream of the crop. I don't know. I think I'm frustrated with Atlanta too, and maybe it's different under Kirk Cousins. But
it was a nice performance by your squad yesterday. Great start by a chain with 31.5 on coming on Monday. So
thank you.
Big win for the Godfather.
Back to where he belongs.
I gotta hang on tonight against our dear pal Ted Wyman. We'll see how that works.
He left a lot on the bench too.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you on CFL 110 on Wednesday. Looking ahead to a huge matchup between the Elks and the Bombers on Saturday night. It should be a good one.
Yeah, this is when the season turns up. This is when our show will go even bigger and better. So be sure to turn in. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody. Let them know Wednesdays after WST.
You bet. We'll see you then, Hammer. Thanks so much. At Jeff K. Hamilton. And, of course, pick up the Free Press on Wednesday for Jeff's column on many of the topics we'll be hitting on CFL 110. All right. Big shout-out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Got to shout out their favorite, the Generics. And we're going to get a few more Generics in us at least one more time at the ballpark tomorrow night as the Goldeyes host Kane County in Game 3 of the championship series. Of course, Generic Lager, a favorite of yours truly. And of course, one of the great beers from our friends at Little Brown Jug. Little Brown Jug made the taste you crave with the name that says it all with this impressively standard lager. Whether you're at a Goldeyes or Jets game or watching from home, grab a cold one and cheers. Generic and all the great Little Brown Jug beers are available in the Exchange District at 336 William Avenue at your local LC or vendor, and now available at all your sporting events. I hope many of you took advantage of the incredible deals at the Royal Sports tent sale on the weekend. There truly is nothing like a Royal Sports tent sale. Thousands of pairs of shoes and merchandise rolled out. They've still got great deals, though, coming on. But for you NFL fans, many people have been wondering, are the new coaches' hats available? Yes, they are. And they're all in at Royal Sports right now. Tons of the new 2024 sideline gear coming in by the day, so you can pick that up. Getting ready for Jets season. All the Jets merch is in. You can get you might want to figure out what number Brad Lambert's wearing or something before you get that jersey, just to make sure. We'll see if he gets an NHL number or one that's given to him. And of course, Bomber gear. Getting ready for the upcoming big game against Edmonton in a couple of weeks. But one thing you can't count on, it is the #1 hockey superstore in town for over 40 years. And as your kids or you get back to the game, One stop at Royals, all you need to get everything you need when it comes to equipment, sticks, protective gear, and more. It is all there at Royal Sports, the hockey experts for over 40 years, 750 Pembina Highway. Give them a follow on Insta as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And as I mentioned with Jeff, we got quite the Monday nighter tonight between the Atlanta Falcons and the Philadelphia Eagles at the Link. Boston Pizza is your place to be for Monday Night Football. Take advantage of all the great deals and eats on their game day menu, including pints of Bud and Budweiser for $7. You got those world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and your chance to win an exclusive trip for two to Vegas for Super Bowl weekend, and other great NFL prizes like jerseys at your local Boston Pizza tonight and every night for NFL football. And of course, if you are staying at home, order online, bostonpizza.com for home delivery. All right, I always love doing this on Friday, or on Mondays, I should say. But it's even more appropriate day to have this on because not only does Connor Hrabchak return to WST today, he does it, to quote Paul Maurice, as a man. 1 year older. Happy birthday to the birthday boy, Connor Hrabchak. You did not get your birthday present yesterday at US Bank Stadium, but you've come back to WST with a smile on your face. How are you? Happy birthday. How was the trip down?
Thank you very much. Yes, it was a great trip. It was fun. Looking back at it, it's great. You know, the day and the drive home after the loss is tough. But looking back on it, I mean, going to that stadium, it was a great game. Seeing a Justin Jefferson 98-yard touchdown live is insane. Like it was such an awesome trip. And yeah, well, the 49ers lost. I've now seen them 4 times live, and they are 0-4. Yeah, there's a stadium. If you've never been to US Bank Stadium, oh my goodness, what a facility. But I've seen them 4 times live.
All in Minnesota?
3 of them are in Minnesota. So this year and then last year, Monday Night Football, they lost. And back in 2018, it was the Jimmy Garoppolo era, they lost. And then once I went to San Francisco and watched a Monday Nighter between the Niners and Seahawks, and they lost that game as well. But this is the life of a 49ers fan. It's just heartbreak. So I'm kind of used to it at this point, and we move forward. But yeah, it was such an unreal experience, and they couldn't win, but it was fun nonetheless.
I thought of you immediately when Sammy Darts hit Jefferson on that play. And Remis, have you seen the replay of that? And not necessarily the beautiful throw from Darnold or Jefferson making it in, but have you seen the work of the ref on that play?
Yeah, I was going to say, who cares about the Justin Jefferson touchdown? How about the ref busting his ass all the way down and then getting out of the way and then getting in position on the goal line to make sure he was there to clearly see a goal line tackle. I did saw some tweets about this ref who was a former football player, so he's going to get awards for that. The ref getting a lot of recognition, but Justin Jefferson making a huge play as well.
Well, I did see some Niner fans afterwards saying, sign that ref up for our secondary right now because he basically had better foot speed seemingly than the 2 guys chasing Justin Jefferson. That was just a tough spot for the Niners. And I think it was partly remembering what happened last year in Minnesota. It wasn't because you were going to the game that I took Minnesota +5.
It would have been a good reason. That would have been a good reason.
Or took them outright in our pick'em pool that they were going to win. But I did think this was maybe going to be a bit of a tough spot. Credit to the Vikings. The crowd looked awesome. There was a ton of 49er fans. Niner fans travel very well. And listen, I still think they were in pretty good shape. I mean, yes, the Seattle Seahawks are first in the division right now. But Connor, I imagine as someone that follows that division so closely, the team that really has to be freaked out is the Los Angeles Rams. They played pretty hard against Detroit. They had an opportunity to potentially win that game. They lose in OT. And they just get absolutely steamrolled by the Cardinals yesterday. Adding to the fact Puka Nacua is out, Cooper Kupp left the game. Their offensive line is decimated. 0-2 starts are tough. 0-3, 0-4, you're pretty much done. And I got to say, as much respect as I have for Sean McVay, they are in a precarious situation after getting absolutely pumped yesterday by Kyler Murray, who was on fire.
Yeah, and I will say the Rams were kind of the trendy pick to win that division in the preseason. You know, people were down on the Niners a little bit. Matthew Stafford just won a Super Bowl a few years ago, and with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua healthy and Kyron Williams in the backfield and a defense that was young but maybe had a little bit to prove without Aaron Donald, they were a trendy pick. But it's looking more and more like the Seahawks and the Cardinals are actually the teams that could threaten for the division there against the Niners. And yeah, without Kupp, without Puka, I know for a fact, as a Niners fan, that the next game is Niners-Rams next week. And without Kupp, most likely, and definitely without Nacua, and that defense that has struggled and just got 40-something points put up on them by Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, that's going to be a really tough spot for them. They could drop to 0-3 if they don't take care of business at home against the Niners. We know that the majority of the fans there will not be Rams fans. But I'm more, as a Niners fan, I'm more scared of the Seahawks and Cardinals right now, especially the Cardinals played the Bills tough on the road and then just killed the Rams at home. So they look really good. I know Jeff Kabilis and Chad is all fired up about his Cardinals and Marvin Harrison Jr. But yeah, this division is going to be fun to watch outside of the Rams, who weirdly enough were like the trendy pick to win the division. But that's just the NFL sometimes. Things happen, injuries happen, and the landscape just shifts week to week.
I see people in chat checking out that video we were talking about. Schickster, just watch the replay. Way to go, Stripes. It truly was something else. Remo, where are you at? Are you buying or selling the Cardinals as a team that could be in the mix in this division?
Oh, hey, first of all, you talk about San Francisco and Minnesota. I should mention their last win in Minnesota, 1992. For the 49ers. Yep. So it's been a long time. The Cardinals, I think Kyler Murray will look good at us. He look like a guy who can scramble around, give him a couple weapons. Trey McBride looking like one of the best tight ends in the league, certainly up there. I took Kyle Pitts over him in the media draft, which I instantly regretted. But Marvin Harrison, it was so funny, all the talk about him not getting the ball, looking really slow in week 1. Didn't look slow yesterday. They found ways to get him wide open, and we'll have to see if the defense can hold up. Hasn't been great, but they needed a number 1 receiver, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I got to say, I'm very tripped out every week in the NFL with all these juniors out there. Antoine Winfield Jr. and Patrick Surtain Jr. I mean, there's so many kids of players these days, and it feels like Marvin Harrison just played. But his son out there, multiple touchdowns in the first quarter. So I don't know. I still like the 49ers, Huss, in that division. I think the Rams, all the injuries, they're in a tough spot. Seahawks, led by Geno Lewis. I'm not so sure. And who's the
Geno Smith, not Geno Lewis.
Geno I got
Lewis
CFL.
will be playing the Bombers on Saturday
CFL.
night in Edmonton.
I got CFL, and Cardinals. Sorry, there's only 14 Cardinals around. Yeah, I could see the Cardinals going up there. Sure, this could be Kyler Murray's year, Huss.
I don't think they're winning the division, but especially if the Rams fall off big time, I think there is a path that they could, be playing meaningful games in week 16, week 17, and 18. And I think certainly offensively they have enough talent that they could be a team that I think could challenge for a wild card. Connor, let me go over on the other side to 0-2 teams. And what do you make of the AFC North right now? The Pittsburgh Steelers, who everyone had written off, knowing that Mike Tomlin never has a losing season. They're 2-0 on the backs of maybe the best defense in the league. The Browns get a big win yesterday in Jacksonville. Jacksonville looks absolutely terrible. And then the Bengals and the Ravens sitting at 0-2, and both incredibly frustrating losses. Cincy sort of imploding in the fourth quarter, and the Chiefs finding a way to win. But to me, the worst loss, maybe even worse than the Cowboys getting humiliated by the Saints at home, was the Ravens blowing a second half 10-point lead to Gardner Minshew and the Raiders, who score 3 straight times, allow Lamar Jackson to do nothing. Very pedestrian game. And they're 0-2. And listen to this schedule for the Ravens at 0-2. They've got the Cowboys this week. Then they play the Bills. and then they play the Bengals. There are no easy outs on the schedule. You thought the Raiders was that, and they're now 0-2. Like, both Cincy and Baltimore put themselves in very precarious situations early on and have to get wins. And especially next couple of weeks for the Bengals looks pretty light. Not so for Jim Harbaugh or for John Harbaugh's squad.
Yeah, I do think that both of those teams, like if you ask me right now, I still think they both make the playoffs, even with the Ravens' tough schedule. I liked the Bengals coming into the season as maybe an underrated pick to win that division. I know the odds, like they were the worst last year because of Joe Burrow's injury. But I did kind of like them to win that division. And the week 1 loss to the Patriots at home was ugly. Very, very ugly. But they played the Chiefs well. They were a DPI away from winning that game on 4th and 16. And like you said, their schedule is a little bit lighter. So I think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, maybe they'll get T. Higgins back, who's missed the first 2 games here with a hamstring injury. And I think they'll start to roll a little bit with that passing attack. The Ravens, they were my pick to start the season to come out of the AFC and challenge the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. I thought it was going to be an AFC Championship rematch. Now that I think I've kind of softened on a little bit with a home loss to the Raiders. I think you have to change your stance a little bit, but they still have a loaded roster. They still have Harbaugh. I still think they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be good. They're going to peak at the right time late in the season. But yeah, 8.5-point favorites at home, and now they're 0-2. This is just a big thing. Like driving home from the Niners game, I was defeated, but it could always be worse. You could be the Cowboys where you just got shellacked at home by the Saints. You could be the Ravens where you're 0-2 and your schedule coming up is terrible, right? So the Niners schedule's light going forward. So I'm looking around the NFL, I'm a little bit softened on the fact that the Niners just lost to Sam Darnold. But yeah.
Remo, how back is Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints?
Oh yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, he's is up there among league leaders in passing. I think a lot of credit to Alvin Kamara rushing for all those touchdowns yesterday. But I mean, going into Dallas, putting up 44, really impressive stuff. So a lot of people are out on Derek Carr, but I think he's always been a competent quarterback. I don't know if he's a guy who can get you over the hump, but in a league where there's not a lot of, least number of passing touchdowns in years after 2 weeks, I think Derek Carr, he's serviceable, and that's pretty good because you're seeing all these rookies come in and can't get anything done. So it seems they're finding a way for him to be successful. He's got a lot of good receivers in Kamara, Shaheed, Chris Olave. I think he's set up for success there, and we'll see what happens. Their division also stinks. Kirk Cousins, we'll see him tonight. He's got one ankle. Bryce Young, he's not the quarterback anymore in Carolina. Yeah. And who's the other team? Who's the other team
would
in that
be
division?
Baker Mayfield and the 2-0 Tampa Bay Bucks, who just went into Detroit yesterday and did all the Viking fans a big favor.
He's good, but I think maybe some questions about their team. So I do like New Orleans. They could have a wild card spot, Huss, but I think that whole division is pretty mad.
Well, I mean, listen, they put up 91 points, and I didn't give really much credit to them at all for doing it to Carolina. I'll give them a lot of credit for going in. And this Clint Kubiak that's taken over the offense for the Saints looks like a freaking genius right now. I mean, he's turned Derek Carr from a guy that looked absolutely washed into a guy controlling the field against one of the better defenses in the league, and it was something else. Connor Hrabchak just mentioned Bryce Young. Nightmare start for the Carolina Panthers, coming off a year where the pick they traded to get him became the number 1 overall selection. But even I couldn't have imagined him losing the job in 2 weeks with Dave Canizales making the announcement. I mean, Andy Dalton, I don't think is the long-term answer in Carolina. But what does this say about the future of Bryce Young in the NFL in the second year after being the number 1 overall pick?
I mean, last week, this Monday edition of the show, I said, what do you do if you're a Panthers fan? You just got smoked week 1 and your season's basically over. Now your team is benching the guy that you traded all these picks and players for, who's supposed to be the future and maybe work through some of these issues that he has. But honestly, if you watch the Panthers games and how Bryce Young is playing, it's understandable. Like, yes, he's running for his life with the offensive line and his weapons aren't fantastic, but at the same time, he's missing easy throws. He's making things way harder than it has to be. And I saw a bunch of NFL Twitter people tweeting out, like, if he doesn't make this change to Andy Dalton, he's going to lose the room because Bryce Young is just not playing at an NFL level right now. And it's true. And yes, like I said, the system around him could be a lot better, but he needs to execute some of these plays. And he's just like jumping to pass in the flat and hitting an offensive lineman in the helmet and throwing these weird interceptions and running around and not seeing defenders right in front of him and taking headshots in the backfield. It's just, he's not playing how he did at Alabama and why he was a number one pick. There was a reason he went that high, and none of those traits have translated to the NFL so far. So to save their season, they're going to go to Dalton. And I'm sure if they end up, 1-7 or 1-8, we might see Bryce Young again at the end of the year to end things off. But they're going to have to try and save their season. So they're going to go to the red rifle here and see what he can do.
Yeah, this is going to set Alabama quarterbacks back 2 decades in NFL drafts moving forward. Although I guess with Saban out, Alabama isn't maybe the powerhouse that they once were, but they'll always be right up there. So it brings us to the Falcons and Saints tonight. And let's transition over to our Cool Bet lines to check this one out, and I'll get your guys' thoughts on this one. The Eagles are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Atlanta getting 5.5, -106 on the over, -102. Great numbers at Cool Bet for the two sides of the point spread. The total is 45.5. The over -102, the under -106. The money line here, obviously the Eagles a big favorite, -227 and +207. I'm going to be straight. I think all week long I was thinking Eagles. And then I saw what happened in the CFL and I saw what happened in the NFL and every one of these underdogs winning. And I started thinking a little bit more about Atlanta. Like it was their first game playing at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were phenomenal defensively. TJ Watt was in Kirk Cousins' face all night long. I was originally somewhat low on the Eagles to begin with, and as good as they looked, Jalen Hurts had 2 fumbles and 2 picks in that first game. I'm sitting here thinking this is the dog's week, so I think I'm going to ride with the Falcons, and I'm even thinking about maybe a big game for Kirk Cousins, which I'll get to in a minute. Do you see the argument that the Falcons make this a game, Connor, or are you thinking this is going to be the Eagles steamrolling an inferior opponent on a home field?
I could definitely see it. And just to further your point, all these overreactions from week 1, like the Marvin Harrison Jr. slow, like, no, he's not slow. He was a burner in college. He went 4th overall. Like, he's not a slow player. Maybe there's an overreaction on Kirk Cousins' Achilles or his ankle. He looked terrible, but like you said, TJ Watt was running all over the place and he's the defensive player of the year. Anyone would look bad playing against him. So maybe there's a bit of an overreaction there that Kirk Cousins can't move and can't plant his leg. Maybe he comes out and surprises everyone and plays a great game tonight. And the Eagles secondary can be had. And if Drake London and Kyle Pitts are going to have a big game, the Eagles secondary is one to do it against. So I'm less bullish on taking them outright to win, but I don't hate the Falcons and the points here tonight. But I'm just excited to watch Saquon Barkley. He's so much fun to watch, and in prime time, this will be good.
Well, speaking of Barkley, we were kicking that one around for our partner parlay for the game tonight, and they were all in on Saquon Barkley. I think over 74.5 yards. Rima, what's your read on this game tonight? Which side are you on?
Yeah, you guys are crazy for taking the Falcons. I don't think it's an overreaction. Kirk Cousins couldn't move out there. He took 1 snap under center because he can't drop back. He can't scramble. Yeah. He can't plant his foot and throw. Didn't attempt to pass of over 20 yards last week. Drake London, I know Jeff needs him in fantasy, but there's a lot of questions if he being number 1 receiver and if he's going to be able to get the ball to Kyle Pitts. So I know A.J. Brown is out, so I do like Saquon props, especially if you think the Eagles are going to smash. And, they're going to have to run the ball. We saw him run the ball pretty good last game, or pretty well. And I think Atlanta's offense is in trouble. And you look at Kirk Cousins last week and you're like, oh, that's why they drafted Penix in the first round after they signed Kirk Cousins, which seemed to make no sense. But you look at Cousins' lack of mobility, and I see people in chat saying he's never won in prime time, but he can't move. So I don't think you can bet on him.
I think he did finally win one in prime time, but it was an ugly run for a long time.
It was against the Niners last year on Monday Night Football. I can tell you that. I can tell you that for sure. Yeah.
We have a witness. We have a witness to prime time Kirk in that game. Here's what I'm running with. If you want to head over to the exclusives, I'm going with the Falcons plus 5.5. Kirk Cousins, 2 or more passing touchdowns, and Kyle Pitts over 3.5 catches. We got that boosted up to plus 450. So that's there. Our partner parlay, we've got the Pitts 4 or more receptions. Jahan Dotson, 25 or more receiving yards. You expect him to get more looks considering that A.J. Brown is out. And Saquon Barkley, 75 plus on the ground. That one is at plus 465. And Patty has come with his prime timer. He's picking a Kirk Cousins interception or more. Hurts, 25 or more on the ground. And of course, the field goal prop over 4.5 field goals. That's at plus 415. Just as far as that prop goes. And it is now 5-1 on the season after cashing last night. In the first half, before a halftime, you could have gone to bed knowing that you had the 4 field goals. The only game this season it has not cashed for the primetime games was the Buffalo-Miami game last week. And when we did it earlier today, it still is up there at plus 145, the biggest number all year long. 2 great kickers with Koo and with the Eagles and Jake Elliott. So, we'll be getting on that as well, over 3.5. Couple things to mention for CoolBet. A, if you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST when you make your first deposit. 100% bonus up to $200 on that first deposit. And Remis, there is a bounty on your head. A week tomorrow, the second Lock Shop, Winnipeg Sports Talk, Edmonton Sports Talk poker tourney will go. If you missed it the first time, we had such a great time. What you're going to want to do is head on over, hit the, is it right there? Go back down there.
Yeah, they have my name as the bounty. I don't want that there. I don't want that bounty. I'm not going to, people are going to be going for me, trying to knock me out.
Wow. Okay. So not only can you play it, but you get a $100 bounty prize if you knock myself, Dusty, or now the top 2 performers of both crews last time. Remis, who was second. Iwanek, who was 5th. So circle the date, September 24th. Download the if you just click on poker, download the app. It's a great way to play. You can play it there beforehand to get ready for it. Familiarize yourself with the site. But Tuesday, September 24th, a week tomorrow, it is on. We invite you all to join with us and play for it. The first one was a huge success. And I would love to be able to, even with the bounty on my head, earn one of those bounties on Iwanek, Remis, or Dusty. So we will look forward to that. Hey, listen, before we get to our cool bet, before we get to our horse picks and finish up the show, Connor, back at it, and now back to the grind. Training camp coming up this week. I know we've all been looking forward to a Cole Perfetti announcement. It doesn't look like that's happening, but I know you've been paying attention to what's been happening at the Young Stars tourney. Brad looking good. Chibrikov looking like he's ready to compete. I think Braden Yeager's really kind of been a standout at both ends so far. It'll be very interesting to see how many of the players from the tournament get to training camp, and in particular, what the likes of Barlow, Yeager, and of course, Lambert and Chibrikov and Elias Salmonson can do when they're going up against the vets come Thursday.
Yeah, the Young Stars tournament, I mean, you don't want to make like sweeping conclusions from it, but these players that should look good at the tournament have looked good for the Jets, like Lambert and Chibrikov, who, got into that game last year, scored the game winner, had a great year with the Manitoba Moose. he's kind of a wild card, I think. A lot of people are talking about Lambert in that second line center role, and some people are very bullish on Elias Salamonson maybe cracking the roster, even though it's more likely he'll be with the Moose this year. But Chibrikov's kind of flying under the radar as a player who might crack the bottom six, even though there's not much room down there for a player to make it. So I'm really excited for camp this week. Like you said, back to the grind. Super excited for FanFest. Last year, I was in Minneapolis with my buddies for a Vikings game, not a 49ers game, but it was just a Vikings game. But I miss FanFest, so I'm excited to be there on this Saturday for the morning skate, the live show with you guys, and of course the game that night. So I'm super pumped for this week to get going. Hockey's finally back. Football's in full swing. CFL is coming down the stretch here. This is a great time for sports. I'm fired up.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I haven't totally looked at the entire training camp schedule, but we're also going to be there on Friday doing the show heading into the weekend. Training camp will be underway, and we will definitely see you there. And of course, folks, stay tuned to the Winnipeg Sports Talk social channels for clips, highlights, latest details on what's going on at training camp. Make sure to be following us at Sports Talk WPG on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere. It's at Sports Talk WPG. What's up for tonight? Big rager or a little dinner? What's the birthday dinner? Do you get to choose where you go or what you're eating? What's the meal of choice for your big day?
Yeah, just a dinner. No Monday parties, but
you're not hitting booty shake at the Pal?
No,
it's a Monday institution in the city.
I'm going to James Avenue Pump House for dinner. That'll be good.
That's right by the Pal. Maybe we grab you afterwards and take you for your first booty shake.
Order me my Uber and I'll be there. Yeah, great. Yeah, and then for my birthday, it'd be nice if Devontae Smith scores under 42 half PPR fantasy points tonight, so I can move to 2-0 in fantasy football. That would
40 yards or 42 points?
42 points half PPR.
If you lose this game, your birthday is cursed. I mean, from yesterday to today.
Yeah. So I'm putting $1 on a Devontae Smith parlay where he has like 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, where the payout's insane, but that's all the only way I lose. So might as well do it, right?
Oh,
good stuff.
It's a good hedge. I like that, Connor. Smart thinking.
Yes.
Really big
Fantasy
brain right there.
hedge.
Oh,
Yep.
Connor, great stuff. Listen, happy birthday, buddy. All the best to you. Glad you had a good time down in Minneapolis. Your Niners will be fine. It's early. It's week 2. And you get the Rams next week, and they were beat up, as we've just talked about. So
it could always be worse, Huss.
Doing want to look good. We'll see you down at the rink. Thanks again for everything, and have a great one tonight. Enjoy the dinner down at the Pump House. Looking forward to a report on that. I've never been there before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, next Monday I'll have a food review ready to go.
You know what? Well, maybe even before, later on this week when we see it down at FanFest.
There we go.
All right. There's Connor Hrabchak. Make sure you're giving him a follow, and of course the Sports Talk Winnipeg channels. He'll be cranking out stuff from training camp when things get going in earnest a little later on this week. And the Cool Bet lines. You can check out everything we've cooked up for tonight in the Cool Bet exclusives. You can check up the combo cards, the starts, and then, of course, just click on the game for more options when it comes to player props if you want to ride on your favorite fantasy players for tonight's game. All right, Remis. We are now down to 5 days of live racing. And to let all our listeners know, I am, I think, $24 behind Michael in our season-long race. We've got 5 nights left of live racing. Tonight, tomorrow and Wednesday, and next Monday and next Tuesday. So it is definitely crunch time. The picks have never been more important. And we've got a big slate tonight. A couple smaller races to start it off, but we've got a full 8-race card this evening. And I'm certainly leaning towards the later races for my selections tonight.
I don't even remember. I did mine before. There were some heavy favorites which I stayed away from. I got 2, 8, 5, 6 on mine.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm 5, 6, 7, 8. So why don't you dive into what you have in race 2, and then we'll get to the second half of the card where I'm dabbling.
Okay, let me see what I have here. Race 2. And don't forget, we're going to get to that Byfuglien clip, the Byfuglien update after the show.
Yes, as soon as we're done on this, we've got the Buff update.
After these picks, so you're going to want to stick around for that. Oh, yes, I got an exacta here on race 2. I had to pick this one. Let me pick it up here. Race 2, I bet on horse 1, He Knows, We Know, and horse 3, Mr. Splash. That's my exacta for race 2.
All right, so we now move to race 5 where things really pick up. Pretty big race. I'm going with the triactor box of number 1, Cece's Kitten, number 3, Westlover, and number 7, Orcadian Storm. We're getting 7 sort of more of a long shot. I'm going to mix that in with 2 of the favorites for a 1-3-7 triactor box. What do you have on race 5?
On race 5, I have 4 to win. Optimistic Valor.
Oh, nice. Well, if you win, I will not win. So we're definitely head-to-head on that one. Race number 6, I have an exacta box, 3-7. Lieutenant Norm and Gallant Oak. And what's interesting, Gallant Oak is second in both the program selections and the AI Smart Picks. Lieutenant Norm is not even a program selection, but is the number 1 AI Smart Pick. So I'm riding with AI and Lieutenant Norm and Gallant Oak, 3-7 exactor box for race number 6. Do you have race number 7?
I got race 6. I got 6-7 exacta box, Dino's Cape, and Gallant Oak. And I also have a separate small $2 wager on Dino's Cape to win.
Excellent. All right, moving on to race 7. I've got the 5-8 exacta box, Lola Lee and Not True. 5-8 either way for race number 7. And that, I guess, brings us to our final pick, race number 8. What do you have for race 8?
I have to win horse 1, Gold Special.
I'm fading Gold Special. I've got a 2-6-8 triactor box. The Calabrese Kid, Lab Rat, and the favorite Rydom. That race, I'm calling it right now, race 8 tonight could be the turning point of the entire season. We will see.
We'll see.
We've got our picks in at hpibet.com. If you can't make it out to the track, you can play at hpibet.com at Assiniboia Downs and tracks from around the world. But I suggest you get out there in person, free admission, free parking. They go to post tonight at 7:30. 5 more days of live racing, as I mentioned. This week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Monday and Tuesday of next week, the final day of live racing, September 24th. All right, we've taken care of most of our business. Now, Remo, fill us in on this clip that we're about to hear. Where is it from? How did you find it? And what are we about to hear?
Okay, well, someone posted it in our Discord group under Jets or NHL. There's a lot of people chatting in there all the time. It's in the description of this video or podcast. Hop
Join
in
the
there.
Discord. Join the Discord.
Say hello, yeah. So you get gems like this. So he was on the Soda Pod with Joe Smith. I think he's still with the Athletic. It wasn't Byfuglien. It was Byfuglien's agent, Ben Hankinson. And if Ben Hankinson's doing interviews, it always comes up, what's Byfuglien up to these days? And this was his answer. If you wanted a Dustin Byfuglien update, here it is from his agent, Ben Hankinson from the Soda Pod.
He's on the fishing tour. He just stopped by and was up on Gull Lake. I have a little cabin up there. Met him, and he was in the tournament, a bass tournament. Took him out for dinner, and which was fun to see him. He's only put on a few pounds. He looks great. He loves fishing. He's got the great hands. He's pulling in bass and smiling and loving life.
God, he's not nearly as far off the grid as I would have thought then. And do you have a client, former or current, that you get asked about more often than Dustin Byfuglien?
No, he's one of a kind. I mean, he told me when he signed his 5-year deal, I don't want a 5-year deal. And of course, he's just saying that to me. And sure enough, he quit like with 2 years left on the deal. Like it's 8 and a 6 were the numbers that started. The 1 year was $8 million, the next year was $6 million. and he quit. And I told him, like, my kids were no longer going to go to private school. They weren't anyway. But no, like, and he walked away. And he said, I told you I didn't want a 5-year deal. It wasn't the money at all. And all he had to do was basically go get some rehab and attempt to come back. And it was a hockey injury. And he just left it on the table and walked, which is insane. He's the more you know him, the more you love him. He's the best.
The true unicorn of professional hockey, Dustin Byfuglien. And, you know, as I kind of mentioned, I did that event with Chevy at Breezy a couple weeks ago where Chevy was the speaker, and then we did sort of a sit down and we got to Buff, and he told the story of, you know, Buff coming to camp and then, you know, them meeting in person afterwards and Buff being pretty adamant that, you know, that he was done. But I always wondered, Remis, like how those conversations went with the agent, because there's not a lot of agents that I know that have on their watch had their clients say, you know what, I'm good. That's okay. Take the $14 million. I'm going fishing. But that's exactly what Buff did, and that is why he will always be a center of so much lore. And there he is. Oh, there's with Gussie's, our pal Jeff Gustafson's.
I think his brother.
His brother.
He's with Brian Gustafson in a fishing tournament, and someone on, I think Leon on Instagram, sent me these pictures. So here he is. There's one picture and another. So he's living his best life, but to have his agent say he was insane for walking away from the final 2 years, and that Byfuglien joked, I don't want a 5-year deal, when every other player in the league is trying to get as many years as they can, and then walking away.
I told you.
And then, I told you I didn't want a 5-year deal. And then adding in joking that his kids can no longer go to private school because of it. I enjoyed that clip. So Turd Ferguson in the chat shared that in the Discord server this morning from the Soda podcast. That's Minnesota here on YouTube.
You know, just on that, you know, now that, you know, some of that first generation of Jets 1.0 players are sort of done, it'll be really cool at some point to, you know, maybe, you know, maybe in the 15th year, they'll do a reunion, you know, Brig Ladd and Brian Little and Buff back. I mean, at some point, I think Buff will be celebrated by the organization and the team. And that will be right up there with the most popular specialty nights, I think, ever. I mean, he's still, for the majority of Jet fans, I mean, an absolutely beloved figure. I mean, and a mythical one, too. So to get him out, maybe say a few words to the fans would be really cool. I do think, though, the first one coming is going to be on Brian Little, who, you know, we'll see and hear about what the team has planned, potentially even as early as this year for Brian Little. But I kind of do wonder, Remis, with Blake Wheeler now potentially not playing this year and retiring, you know, some sort of thing with the likes of Little, Ladd, Wheeler, Buff, and a bunch of the other colorful characters of that first-year team. It certainly would make for an incredible celebration here in Winnipeg of a team that will always be looked back so fondly because of what they were a part of in bringing the NHL back to Winnipeg.
Yeah, Murat Atesh tweeting last week that Blake Wheeler is processing, you know, his situation, currently not signed. We are seeing some veteran players signing. James Van Riemsdyk with Columbus over the weekend. Could Phil Kessel get a PTO? We'll see what the future holds for Blake Wheeler. And yeah, you're looking at the promotional nights. Last year we had Jets Hall of Fame with Solani and Numanen. What a great time that was. I don't know if that was last year or 2 years ago. Might be getting ahead of, you know, time. Who knows what time is these days? But yeah, it's been almost 15 years since year one, and I imagine they would have some kind of night at some point honoring that inaugural team or some of the players. Brian Little for sure when he officially retires. So it's something to look forward to. I already see a lot of people in chat writing 33 the rafters, you know, having a time to, you know, say goodbye to Dustin Byfuglien because, you know, the fans never really got a chance to officially do that. And it just didn't really end in a great fashion for the organization.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, as much as it really did put the organization in a terrible spot, that, like with everything, time heals all wounds. And it wasn't nefarious. I mean, it wasn't like that, he demanded a trade and wanted to go somewhere else. He was just done. And, communications with Buff was never one of his strong suits. So the fact that it kind of got relayed in a very unique and not necessarily timely way, I don't think should be surprised. Why not question of the day for our friends at Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray? How many of the first year Winnipeg Jets, the 2011-2012 Jets, do you think will end up as members of the Winnipeg Jets Hall of Fame? When you think back to the players that have already been inducted, there was sort of the WHA period. There's been some of the 1.0. Like when I think Brian Little and Blake Wheeler are locks. I think Dustin Byfuglien's probably there. Maybe not Andrew Ladd just because he wasn't here as long. But at some point, Remis, and again, these won't necessarily be retired numbers, but they will have banners up in the arena. I think at least 3 of those players that were on that 2011-2012 team will be honored here in the Peg.
Yeah, that's a good question. Blake Wheeler for sure. He's an all-time, or the Winnipeg Jets 2.0 leader in points. Brian Little, I mean, his career ended a bit prematurely. Andrew Ladd, I agree, wasn't here as long. I think Wheeler for sure. Little, maybe they'll have a night to honor him. I don't know about that, about Hall of Fame, but I could see Wheeler's number for sure going up, but I'm not sure about the others. And I guess I could see Byfuglien, but I don't know. It seemed like it didn't end in a great way, and maybe that would halt things.
I can just tell you from hearing Chevy tell that story a few weeks ago and, how close he is, the fact that they still talk. I mean, and listen, I think it's also a part of, doing right by the fans. And I'm not sure that there's many players in Jets history people would prefer to see celebrated than a guy like Dustin Byfuglien. And I think Brian Little just did so much for this team. He was a quintessential Winnipeg Jet. He wasn't the loudest one, but he certainly was one of the most important ones. Spent his entire NHL career with this organization despite a trade which he accepted to help the team out. I don't think there's any doubt that Brian Little will be a part of it. And maybe Little and Wheeler together, similar to what they've done in the past, might be the way they do it. Anyways, we'll follow that. But it's less about stars of 2011, 2012, more about 24-25 this week because the Winnipeg Jets training camp opens in just a matter of, we're down to hours now at this point, Remis, as they finish up the golf today. Hopefully they didn't get too wet. It was a little uglier earlier, but another day of skating and then physicals on Wednesday and getting after it on Thursday with many of the young players that have been representing the Jets at the Young Stars tournament back in Winnipeg for the main camp.
Yeah, the countdown is on. Training camp starting. The clock on the Perfetti contract. Is that going to get done before? Wait and see. Before we wind down just 2 other local notes. While we're doing the show, American Association announcing Andrew Collier named Executive of the Year. So congratulations to Andrew, frequent guest on this show. And the other note, just came out from the CFL. They just fined Miles Brown the maximum amount for his low hit on Chris Drevler from the Banjo
So he went
Bowl.
back-to-back fines in back-to-back games against the Bombers on back-to-back 15-yarders against Bomber quarterbacks.
According to salary information obtained by 3 Down Nation, they say it should be just over $2,500.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. No love lost for Miles Brown in Winnipeg. And Bombers back to practice tomorrow without Chris Drevler. We'll stay on top of that all week long here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you're with us live on YouTube, keeping an eye on what's going on here. And it looks like the Jets actually just scored again. And it's Henry Nikkanen, who I believe has put the Jets up 2-0 in this game against the Edmonton Oilers prospects. This buddy, I believe Torgerson, got the goal earlier today. So both those guys that played in the A last year getting on the scoreboard today. No goals against right now, which I'm sure the coaching staff will love. But 2-0 right now with 5 minutes left. You can watch that game live over on the Jets webpage if you want to catch the last 5 minutes of the show. Tomorrow, we'll get Ken Wieben for a full training camp preview. So buckle up for that. Bombers back at practice, a recap of the Monday Nighter, and so much more with 2 days to go until training camp. Make sure to join us tomorrow. If you've got some Jet fans or new Jet fans in your life, let them know about Winnipeg Sports Talk, where they can find us. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your favorite pods, and make sure you're subscribed right here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m., counting down to Jet training camp with Ken Wieben more. Thanks to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. We couldn't do it without them. Thanks to Jeff Hamilton, Jamie Thomas, and the birthday boy, Connor Hrabchak, for jumping on with us as well. And, of course, as always, to Michael Remis. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy Monday Night Football, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. to get ready for Jet training camp right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.